Again, for those of you that may have just gotten here, JShredz is one of the coaches for Toronto Esports and is going to be working with me, hopefully now and in the future, to help me continue to grow as a Paragon player. So I'm going to be bringing him in. We'll go ahead and we'll get started. I am going to turn notifications off so that we don't have any disruptions while we are doing this, okay? And I'm also going to go ahead and update the stream title. All right, here we go. All right, there you have it. We are all set. And let's go ahead and bring my man in here. Uh-oh. Let's lower the music. Good evening, sir.
Hey, what's going on, my friend?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I hope you had a good day. How was work?
Oh yeah, no, it was fine. It was a
Good.
pretty easy day. Nothing too bad.
Yeah, you took the day off. You were just getting ready for this, huh?
Oh yeah, no, clearly, yeah, clearly. Spent the whole day, spent 15 hours today prepping all my notes and all that. No, I've been looking forward to this though. It should be fun.
Me too. Me too. I really have. I'm excited. I know we spent a little bit of time before we got into the session on Thursday with you going over some what you consider basic concepts, kill hierarchy, and those things. Do you think we can cover those things again so that everyone can hear those? Because I thought those were pretty important.
Absolutely, and actually, the kill hierarchy is going to be something. It's kind of, in my opinion, the foundation of decision making in a team fight and target selection. Whether you should go in, who you should be focusing, things like that. So that's going to be, I think, pretty central through both games that we're going to take a look at today. So for those who are not familiar with it, the kill hierarchy is something that I have coined as kind of a basic system for gauging value out of a team fight. Like, if 2 people die on one team and 3 people die on the other team, which team wins the team fight? And this is ignoring objectives and things like that. So the way the basic kill hierarchy works is it's a really simple point system from 1 to 5, 5 being the most, 1 being the least, of how much I think each role on a team is worth. So, 5 points is super valuable, 1 point is not all that valuable. And again, I think it's a really simple system for trying to gauge, well, we took out their mid laner and their jungler, and they got our carry and our support. So who came out better in that trade? So it does vary slightly from game to game, and it depends, on who's way ahead, who's super fed, who's super behind. But in general, it tends to break down by roles. So the 1 point is the person that is easiest to sacrifice and the one that hurts your team the least if they die, and that's the support, right? The support should be looking to put themselves in, sacrifice, try and make plays for their team. 2 and 3 points I tend to think of as the offlaner and the jungler, depending on which role they're playing. So sometimes you'll have your offlaner be your kind of frontline tanky presence, someone like a Greystone or someone pretty beefy, and your jungler will be higher damage, like a Sereth or a Grux, something like that. Sometimes it'll be the other way around, and you'll have someone like Bellica in the off lane and someone like Sevarog, for instance, in the jungle. So whoever is doing more damage, I consider the 3-point target, and whoever is kind of the tanky front line, I consider the 2-point target. The 4-point target is your mid laner, right? Your casters tend to do a ton of damage, especially big area damage in a close confined team fight. And then your 5-point target, your most valuable target in any fight, is the carry. So again, we go back to saying, we took a mid laner and a jungler, right? So let's say 4 points and 3 points, and then they took out our carry and our support. So that would be 5 points and 1 point. So in that case, taking out the mid and the jungler is probably more valuable in most cases if you're trading them for a carry and a support, just in terms of relative value in your ability to continue a team fight, to contest objectives, things like that. It's not perfect, but I do think it gives you a rough idea of who you should be focusing on, who your damage dealers are, who is going to give you the most trouble after a fight. And the big thing that this means, and this is going to be particularly relevant for what we're talking about with these two games because you're playing the carry role, is it is almost never worth it to trade 1-for-1 as a carry. Right? If you are going in as a carry and you're like, I can finish this kill, but I know I'm going to die right after it, like that's the kind of situation where you want to think twice because you are the most valuable member of your team. And even if you get another kill, the odds of coming out ahead trading 1-for-1 are low because you're a 5-point hero and you're killing at best another 5-point hero. And, at best you're going even. Okay. So that's just a basic thing, and we'll touch on this a lot more. I know it was a little bit of a spree, but we'll touch on this a lot more as we go through the game. But I just want to kind of lay that groundwork.
Right. And so when we spoke on Thursday, I shared with them that we spent about 50 minutes together on Thursday, but we only made it through about 5 minutes worth of gameplay. And so during the kind of like the prelude to the actual footage. And you were talking about the kill hierarchy. One of the things that I said was, support being least valuable, I brought up phase, right? And I specifically brought up, the advent of Greystone and phase together and how incredibly difficult that can be to counter if you don't address the support right away. And so do you want to touch a little bit on that?
Yeah, so that's that's certainly one of the counterexamples. FaZe has kind of thrown a wrench into everything. I think it would be hard to argue against her being probably the most dominant hero in the game right now in terms of her ability to influence a team fight, her ability to influence a game. She really, with all of her regen, with her ability to pull people out of danger, with her ability to blind, the slows, the roots. She just has so many tools at her disposal, but she doesn't really have a getaway mechanic herself. So she is one case in which, even though she's not that valuable in terms of a kill hierarchy point scale, her ability to transform a game is such that it's almost worth throwing everything that you have at her, trying to get rid of her first, and then dealing with the other 4 people on the enemy team.
Okay. Perfect. Wonderful. Now, the other thing we spoke about was you really quickly just touched on the Yin build and blink shot over blink charm. Do you want to touch on that now, or do you want to talk about that later?
Yeah, so that's something that so in this case, in both games that you played Yin, and in both games you went blink shot over blink charm. However, in both games, every time you used blink, it was defensively, and you never had in this game you used it offensively once, but you weren't able to get the kill that would reset it. So for those that are new to blink shot is a kind of teleport card that allows you to travel forward, same as any other blink. And the thing that makes it different is that if you get a kill within a couple seconds of using that teleport, then the cooldown for the teleport goes back to 0, so you can use it again. So, you could think of it as kind of jumping checkers, right? If you get a good jump and you take an enemy checker piece, you can keep jumping over and over again. And that's what this is designed for. This is designed to allow you to teleport, get a kill, teleport to someone else, get a kill, and things like that. The downside comes in that it's got a much longer cooldown if you don't get that kill, or if you're using it defensively to run away, than a regular blink. And they cost the same amount. They're both 5 points in your deck. But the thing with Yin that I think makes Blink Charm pretty tough is that she has a better gap closer than pretty much any carry. I think probably a better gap closer than any carry, except maybe Sarah, it's iffy on whether she's really a carry or whether she's, some weird hybrid role. Because Yin's got that lash kick. She's got the ability to throw her whip out, latch onto someone, and pull in real close. She doesn't necessarily need a blink in the same way that someone like Revenant.
What's up, Blood Rage? How's it going?
Or, even Twin Blast or Sparrow would need a blink to chase people because she's got really good ability to chase people. What she does need a blink for is to get away. And this is what makes Yin different. So when you think about Twin Blast, when you think about Murdoch, when you think about Revenant, they're all ranged carries, right? They all fire from a certain range. So they can hide behind the rest of their team and dish out damage. They don't have to get right up in the face of people in order to do their damage. The thing with Yin is her range is pretty much a melee range. It's a little bit longer than a normal melee range, which means in order to do damage, even against an enemy melee hero, she's really got to get up in their face, which means that if she decides to turn and run, she's not already going to have that built-in gap that someone like Murdoch would have, that someone like Twin Blast would have when they're poking from range, which means that it's going to be a lot more important for her to be able to create that gap for herself. And in this game in particular, you tended to run into a lot of trouble with the enemy Gideon, with this big black hole ult, and you tended to get caught in that because you didn't want to use your blink shot, because you didn't want to put it on cooldown. But a regular blink would have given you a shorter cooldown. You could have used it more frequently and probably would have lived a little bit more often.
Okay. And one of the things that we did discuss was if you can only choose between one or the other, then you go Blink Charm, right?
I would go Blink. If you have to choose for Yin, I would go Blink Charm. I would think about Blink Shot if you're playing a ranged carry. But again, the fact that you really have to get up in someone's face to do damage, right? If you decide that you no longer want to be in that fight, you no longer want to keep fighting them, and you turn around, they are right behind you. So you really need something to allow you to get away. Whereas with a ranged carry, you're poking them and you decide you don't want to be in this fight. You turn around and they're 10, 15, 20 feet behind you, right? They have to use something to catch up to you just to get close to you, which is far different than Yin, who you're already right next to them.
And then the technique would be if you do have both, if you can fit Blink Shot and Blink Charm in your deck, you always would come out Blink Shot first. Once you use that, you immediately get rid of it and you go Blink Charm. Is that accurate?
Right. So that's kind of a neat mechanic when it comes to regular Blink Charm and Blink Shot. So the way that the game calculates blink cooldowns is it calculates kind of the number of seconds it has been since the cooldown of the blink. So I think Blink Shot is a 280 second cooldown. Let's say that it's been 60 seconds since you used Blink Shot, so it would be at 220 seconds to go. You can sell it, pick up a Blink Charm, and instead of 220 seconds to go, since the base Blink Charm cooldown is only 180 seconds, it'll subtract the 60 seconds that it's been from your Blink Shot, and then make it 120 seconds, instead of 200 seconds or so. So it allows you to use the Blink Shot and have it there aggressively, but if you have a situation where you had to use it defensively, it doesn't hurt you that first time if you swap it over to a regular Blink Charm.
Okay. All right. I think that's pretty much everything we covered before we got into the footage. I mean, outside of all the pleasantries and whatnot. So I think we're ready to go. I'm ready to go if you're ready to go. Do you?
Let's do it. So let's do something real quick, just to kind of get a baseline. So I know that you're going to be hitting the jump to time. So do me a favor. Can you jump to 5 minutes? And then can you pause it and tell me what the timer is at the top of your screen?
2:55.
You're at 2:55 at 5 minutes even?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay, that's perfect. So sometimes it's a little bit different. I know when you and I were going over it the other day,
we were like
they were
2 seconds
off.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the same. So I'll be able to use my timestamp and I'll be able to tell you exactly what time you should jump to. So this is good.
Wonderful. And if we can establish a baseline here, every time you give me a jump to time, I'm gonna type in the time, hit enter, and immediately hit pause, and then I'll wait for you to tell me 1, 2, 3, go, or whatever your thing is. Okay.
Perfect.
All right.
Perfect. All right, so we're going to start something off that we talked about, which is it didn't hurt you in this case, but it is what I would consider not a great habit and something that could really hurt you in the future. So if you could jump to 3 minutes and 5 seconds.
Okay, I'm there now.
All right, so let's take a look at where you are. And you can switch to the drone view if you want to, or you could just look at the hero view. So right now you're hanging out really close to the river. You're pushed up pretty far, pretty close to the enemy tower. So what you are doing is you're waiting for the minion wave to arrive, which you're going to end up pulling the minions, and we'll talk about that. That's something that you did very well in this case. But what you're doing right now is something that won't always punish you, and it won't necessarily punish you if you're not playing against either a coordinated group of people or some really kind of high MMR experienced players. You're hanging out in a really dangerous zone, killing time. So this is something that I think I want to point out for players that it won't always hurt you, and in this case it didn't hurt you. But you're hanging out in a zone. You don't have your support with you, right? You don't have any protection. And if the enemy team decided that they wanted to invade early because they knew that you were doing this, if they had been, let's say this was a competitive game and they had scouted you, they could have picked up a group of a couple people, invaded through your jungle, come around behind you and gotten a really easy kill right off the bat, or even walked through the fog wall if they had any sort of crowd control. Right, a Decker stun if they decided to bring Decker to the left lane and invade you right off the bat. So it's something to be aware of. In general, you want to hang out by your tower for as long as possible, and then you come out just before that minion wave is going to show up there, so that you can do the proper pulling.
That's a great point. I mean, if I ever play competitive, I mean, it'd probably be a miracle. But streaming, we do have. Circumstances where I'm playing against viewers, and so if they watch me enough and they see that I have a certain habit, even if they're in solo queue, they could simply say, hey, I need, in the draft, they could be like, hey, so-and-so, I need you to meet me here, and we're going to gank him early. And then, right. yeah. So, I mean, for sure.
And this is a shout out to the Arctic Wolves competitive team, which has been around for ages, but they... even when they're grouping with, if one or two of them are playing, they will talk to their team in advance, and they tend to always look for early invades. So as you start to improve your play and as you start to bring your MMR up and play against more and more experienced players, you're more likely to run into people who are going to be thinking about that early invade and trying to establish that early dominance, because, really one kill on the carry early on can be a pretty big deal.
Right.
So that's good. So let's talk about the minion drag then. So this is a technique that you're going to do, which I consider a pretty high level technique. So do me a favor, go to 3 minutes and 20 seconds.
I'm there.
All right. So let's talk about what you're about to do right here. So can you walk your viewers through what you are trying to do, why you're pushed so far up when your wave is so far behind you, and why you're going to kind of veer off and make them shoot you?
Yeah, so essentially what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to pull this minion wave, the very first one. I'm trying to pull their aggro so that they focus me and get off of course. So what I'm trying to do is delay the arrival by which they meet my minion wave that's en route as well, which we can't see from this perspective. But by having them meet early and by spreading the wave, essentially what I'm trying to do is having my minions, instead of focusing on one enemy minion and just slamming through them, I'm trying to have them spread the damage out so that the enemy minion wave ends up, winning that first battle, if you will. So they're gonna they're gonna collide, they're gonna get into a fight, and then I want the enemy minion wave to be stronger at the end of that fight than mine, and this way the minion wave will stack and start pushing up towards my tower, and I will continue to make sure that there's always one more enemy minion than mine. The closer it gets to my tower, then I have to start to manage that a little more properly and just try to freeze the lane. By doing so, I cut off the offlaner from his general XP, or alternatively, if he or she decides that they're going to move up the lane and overextend, quote unquote overextend, come past the river so that they can be close enough to absorb XP, they are now gankable. And it's early game, so they'll be weak even if it's a Greystone, which you were talking about the other night as well.
Right. So we'll talk a little bit about the matchup in a second, but I think this freezing is really important to talk about, because I think this is something that really separates brand new players from players that are kind of starting to get their feet grounded in Paragon. And this was certainly new to me when I when I started Paragon, because I came from Smite, where you tried to push further, and you tried to push your wave as fast as possible. So freezing the wave is a concept where the ultimate goal is to make it so that the minion waves keep annihilating themselves right outside your tower. So why this is important is because it gives you better lane control. And you would think, oh no, you want to push the minions, right? You want to keep pushing. No. So in this case, early game, what you're focused on is trying to be as safe as possible and get as many minion last hits as possible. So when you freeze the wave, you end up, and we'll see this in a few seconds, you end up in a position where you get to sit under your own tower, safe and clear. You don't have to worry about anyone coming to gank you, and no one's going to come attack you. And you can sit there and you can just last hit minions all day long without having to worry about watching your backside. Whereas the enemy has to come all the way out of their tower, all the way up close to your tower, to be in a position to even be close to the minions, which forces him or her to be far more careful. They've got to watch their own back, and you could turn on them at any time if you wanted to. You could just turn and attack them, and they have a long way to run back to safety. So freezing is very, very important, and it's a skill that I think all carries in particular should learn how to do and learn how to manage waves properly, because it makes a big difference in how many minion kills you're able to get safely without having to worry about putting yourself in a dangerous position.
Really quick, if you could tell me if this isn't the appropriate time for this, but on this subject, when we're talking about the reasons why you freeze your lane, so Culturalism in chat was saying, 1, you get farm, 2, you starve the offlaner, 3, they overextend, you can get a free kill, right? So the very first one, getting farm. So there's been a little bit of a debate in the channel at times where people are like, oh, I like to take that tower early. And so they're aggressive. So obviously we can give all the counterpoints on why you wouldn't want to be aggressive. But I think when we're talking about getting safe farm, do you feel that taking that tower before 5 minutes robs the carry of CXP mathematically from a time perspective?
So I don't. So here's why. So 1, you're going to have a siege minion wave at right about 5 minutes. So a siege minion wave is a wave with an extra large minion that does extra damage to towers and is particularly effective for taking down towers. So again, it probably varies depending on the level you're at and depending on your ability to control the wave. If you are comfortable in your ability to control a wave when it comes back to you, then taking a tower is not going to hurt you. Right, you can take a tower, you can keep pushing, and you can push the minion wave all the way into their tier 2, which will cause it to flip back towards you. It'll cause it, when you push a wave into tower, because the tower is doing damage, the tower will then kill your wave faster, which will then cause it to, cause the lane to be what we call flipped, which means the enemy wave is going to have the advantage and push back towards you. And then you can get back to your own tower, and then you can farm onto your own tower. The other reason that I think taking that first tower is really important is because of positioning. So especially on this side in particular, because we're talking about the Raptors side, right? So the Raptors are the objective that comes up at the 10-minute mark. They're 3 dinosaurs, and killing them gives you a lot of card XP. It's a lot of Paragon's version of gold. So having control over this part of the map is very important. Being able to be in a position where you can take the Raptors and you can force the enemy out. So the reason I think taking that tower early is not a bad thing is because even if that enemy offlaner is farming all the way under their own tower, it affords you 2 things. 1, it means your jungler can be far more aggressive because your jungler can look to invade the off-lane jungle camps. And if they need to, they can run out to lane through where that tower used to be. So that's 1 extra way that they can get out. 2, it means you can push up further as either the duo or the duo with the jungler or having the mid rotate over, which means you can then back up, if you will, to do Raptors with the enemy staying further back. So you kind of, if you think of it in football terms, where you're kind of pushing forward as far as possible before you punt and force them to have to start their offense from further back. This is kind of a similar thing. Having that control and being able to take down that tower forces them to play on their back foot, which means they have to come farther out of their safe zone in order to contest objectives like Raptors or like the mid-river buffs or eventually OP. And I think it's important to have that level of control over the map. Take that territory whenever you can.
Okay, so now Raptors aren't up till 10 minutes. So I mean, essentially, if you do that at, let's say, 8 minutes, are you not like kind of in the same scenario? And then, however, I'll preface this by saying, if you wait till 8 minutes and you're not available for mid rotations, right, and the other team does do this, and they're now establishing map control on their side, and then they can force a fight in mid, whereas you haven't taken yours, and you can have Raptors like kind of barreling down on you, and now the carry has to make a decision whether to rotate to mid to contest the team fight or to save his tower, or set the wave and then rotate. Would you say, like, I guess, what do you prefer to see a carry do? Do you prefer to see a carry at 5 minutes pushing, with the siege minion and trying to take the tower, so that then he's open for rotations earlier than the 10-minute mark for Raptors, or?
So it depends. So if you are at a position where you're taking a tower, you're taking the tier 1 tower by 5 minutes, chances are the offlaner is late. And what I mean by that is, generally you want your offlaner to be hitting level 5 at the 5-minute mark or earlier, because that's generally when the jungler is going to look to rotate, and you're going to want your jungler to make their first gank on the duo when the offlaner hits level 5, because it's the offlaner's strongest point, right? They get their ultimate, they should have a 1 to 2 level lead on the enemy. But if you're able to take a tower by 5, chances are you probably have been able to starve the offlaner, which is what allowed you that dominance to be able to take that. So if the offlaner is not level 5, then when you're taking the tower, the moment you take the tower, you should be looking to the offlaner. The offlaner has 2 choices if you're going in to take the tower. Choice 1 is they hang around the tower and try and keep you from taking it, in which case you've got a good chance that as soon as you take the tower, you turn on the offlaner and you kill him. Option 2 is to run away to their tier 2, which gives you more space, and then you can push the wave all the way out. So here's what should happen if you're taking the tower at 5 minutes. You take the tower at 5 minutes, you maintain the wave, your wave, and you get your next reinforcement wave. You push them all the way forward, you push them into the tier 2 tower, right? You're not going to take the tier 2 tower, but your wave is going to get annihilated under the tower because it's still really early. This means that the wave is going to flip back, right? So now the enemy wave is going to have the advantage because your wave got annihilated under tower. You then back up, you can back to base, let the wave push all the way back to your tower, and then you freeze it under your tower until about the 9-minute mark. 9 minutes 30. As soon as you've done that, not only do you get to still have the wave frozen, still take your gold buffs every 2 minutes, including on the 9-minute, then you set the wave, you kill the enemy minions, you allow your wave to push up. So then you start a slow push right at about the 9-minute 30 mark. The offlaner either has to deal with the slow push that you set up and defend their tier 2 tower, or they let their tier 2 tower take a wave and let a wave crash into it to go try and defend Raptors, right? And it's at that point that you should be rotating over to try and do Raptors right at that 10-minute mark. So if you can get that initial 5-minute tower, you probably can flip the wave back to you. You can back, spend your first couple points, get pretty fat, let the wave come back your way, freeze for a few minutes, and then as soon as you decide that you no longer want to freeze anymore, you just wipe the wave, you move over to Raptors, and you get Raptors for free, because it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation for the enemy offlaner. They either lose a tower or they give up Raptors for free.
Okay. I won't belabor that too much further, but thank you. I appreciate the instruction there.
Yeah, so I think it is, minion management is something that really separates newer players from more experienced players for sure. I think the ability to make the waves push when you want them to push and stay where they are when you want them to stay where they are is, I think, a very key thing, and something that really differentiates players that are have a solid grasp of this game versus the ones that may understand the mechanics but not quite the nuances in that same way.
Okay, roger that.
All right, so let's talk about the next thing. Let's talk about that lane matchup, right? So right now, you're in lane and you've got a Decker, and you're playing Yin.
What timestamp are you at?
It doesn't matter. I'm still at the same timestamp.
Okay.
But we can talk about the matchup. So what what is special about Greystone, right? You and I talked about this a little bit a couple days ago. What do you think stands out about the Greystone matchup?
Well, there was a couple things that stood out to me. Was okay. So I'm really big about freezing the lane, and then I had asked you a question, which was specifically because you were saying that we should have had our Decker poking down the Greystone to zone him out, right? And so I asked a question because I hate when my minions get all like disorganized and they start moving around, and I miss last hits because of it. Because it's just Murphy's law. They'll be going one way, chasing down whatever that new aggro is on the Decker, let's say, and then right as I'm about to take the last hit, they'll just stop and turn around and go the other way. It never fails. So it's something that frustrates me. But so one of the main things was we weren't poking him down, we weren't pushing him back, we weren't zoning him properly, I guess. And then ultimately, the other thing that really stuck out to me about the matchup was eventually I mismanaged the wave. I left too many minions, and we were facing a situation where the minions were undoubtedly going to go under the tower. At this point, what you said was if you're that Greystone, you are pinging to have your jungler come over and stack the lane, and the reason why is they're basically going to dive the tower once those minions get in there, and they can get free kills, which is something that I'm always worried about. And it's like I always want to freeze my lane, but then when I see that a Greystone is not backing off and he's starting to push it and I can't contest the wave fast enough, I'm always like, oh damn, if they dive me here, one of us is going to die, or it's going to get dicey, and then I have to start pinging for help. So those were, I guess, a couple of the things that stuck out to me anyway, but I'm sure I missed something.
No. So that covered a lot of it. So the first thing right off the bat is Greystone fundamentally as a hero is a really simple one, right? He doesn't have a lot of tools under his belt. His primary tool is that he's got an ultimate that will allow him to have a second life, which means he's far more likely to kind of play it fast and loose if he's at low health, and far more likely to dive, and far more likely to get up in your face. But he doesn't get his ultimate until level 5, which means it's very important for you to try and keep him down and try and stall his experience as much as possible in the early game, so that he doesn't hit level 5 until far later, and you've had more chance to get more farm, to build more items, and to get more damage by the time he does hit that. So we'll talk a little bit about the minion crafting, but I want to talk about and John, our DVS, this is going to be the one and only time that I point something out that you did. You actually played a really, really solid game, so I don't want you to think that I'm calling you out in any way, shape, or form. But this is one point that I think is very important to show how you should be playing against a Greystone versus what you guys did. So do me a favor, go with me to 4 minutes and 30 seconds.
I'm there.
Awesome. Okay, so what's going to happen here is you get a good engage on the Greystone, a really solid stun by John. You get a bunch of damage off, and you force the Greystone back. What should happen here is you should then retreat to go deal with the wave and manage the wave, and John should hang out right about where he is now, more or less, in order to keep the Greystone away. So the reason that keeping the Greystone away is important is because the Greystone right now is not looking to get last hits necessarily. He's not looking to get every single bit of farm. What he's really looking to do is trying to get experience, and all he needs to do to get experience is be close enough to when the minions die. And close enough is good enough to get him experience, because experience gets him closer to level 5. So what should happen here is you should turn on him, force him out, back it up, and then John should be turning on Mr. Gooseneck to try and keep him poked out and keep him far away, to keep him from being able to get his farm. This is going to allow you to better set up your wave and better be able to manage that frozen wave. So we're going to play it in 3, 2, 1, play. So you see he does go out, he starts to engage, which is good. You recognize this and you start to move forward. You turn on him, he gets a good stun, you get a good amount of damage on him. So this is all good. This is exactly the way you want to play. You got him down to about half health. So at this point, John should stay right about where he is here while you retreat, and instead both of you retreat with the wave. So this allows Greystone to walk right back up to it, and now he's got a super huge wave. And this is what you were talking about earlier, and you can pause it anywhere you want right about here. This is what we were talking about earlier, where he now has a super huge wave. There's no way that you're going to be able to keep up with it because of how strong this wave is. He's got way more minions than you do, which is going to allow him to then push this into tower, flip the wave back towards him, and then he's going to be able to farm far more safely. Or, dive under tower. Again, this is what we were talking about, where you'd be looking for a jungle rotation to try and dive under tower, try and get a really early kill if possible. Because again, you can still, even early on, and especially with Greystone's new passive where you can absorb the first shot, you can dive early on and get those kills when you do a fair bit of damage. So this is I think the last that we can leave this, and I know that some people are looking for some other more advanced stuff which we can get to during the game, but I do think it's important to go over this kind of early lane management and early minion management.
No, and I saw, I see the comment in chat as well. However, what I will say is, I mean, obviously I have 30 days played, but so does John. I mean, John is a platinum level player, and we executed this poorly. And I will, the wave is out of control here. We don't have, well, actually, we have a minion wave coming in right now. So, I mean, we can manage this. But if we look at the positioning here, yes, the support fell back almost all the way back to tower, while I'm up here. And so although this may seem like a really basic concept, to some, I think that, we're talking about, a gold and a platinum level player here where we didn't execute this properly. So even if we know it, in the heat of the battle, in the heat of the moment, we're not executing that well. And I think I'd go a step further. Last week I was in a game, I don't know, it must have been Wednesday, and I was playing support, and I started to talk about wave management again, right? And I stopped myself short. I said, you know what? I don't want to talk about wave management again. Like I find every time that I'm sorry, I was not playing support. I was playing carry. And I had a support that was chunking down minions instead of letting me freeze the lane. And so I had to stop. I had to type and explain it or whatever. And I started talking about why I was, engaging with this individual, trying to be positive or, whatever the case is, trying to encourage my teammate and at the same time explain to them what we need to be doing. And I said, chat, I'm just not going to talk about this anymore because I feel like every night whenever I play carry, I end up talking about this, and it's probably getting old to you all. And so I said this is a really basic concept, and I feel like everyone I play with should know that. And I actually got responses in chat saying wave management and the proper way to set lanes is actually an advanced concept. And I was like, really? So I understand that for some people it's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, we should all be doing this. But I think even those of us that are that have the knowledge don't necessarily always execute it. Sometimes I knew I needed to freeze the lane, but I didn't necessarily understand what all the concepts were. And remember, I was asking you at what point should I start hitting them and whatnot. And so and you just said, listen, it's really simple. Just always make sure go and count the minions, which I've been doing, and if you just make sure you're going to end up with one more enemy minion to your allied minions. And so I get that these things come off as basic concepts, but at the same time, even when I know it, sometimes I don't know why it's important, or sometimes I just fail at executing it. So so I say again, not to belabor any of these things, but I think that these things are important. But anyway, go ahead.
Right, and I just saw Father Salt saying that he was learning a ton, which is exactly what we want. This session, we understand that you've got viewers of all skill levels. You've got viewers that are brand new. You've got viewers that are diamond players. So the goal of this is to kind of touch on the things that I think can help newer or less competitive players, as well as some more advanced things that I work on with my the people that I coach that are 1800, 1900, things like that. So how about we do this? How about we jump into a more advanced concept? So this is actually, we're going to wind it back a minute or two. So do me a favor. Can you go to 3 minutes and 48? And we're going to talk about a little bit about that positioning to the outside wall that we were talking about on Thursday.
Yes, thank you. I was hoping we'd get into this. So go ahead.
All right. So this is a more advanced concept. So this is something that I've been preaching for quite some time that I think is really starting to become really solid. I'm not saying that I taught everyone to do this, but I think this is something that the community has all kind of realized, especially the competitive community has kind of realized in the last few weeks or months that this is the appropriate way to play this. So let's look at where you're positioned. So you are positioned a little bit to the outside wall, right? You're positioned. You're not. A lot of people tend to kind of last hit in line with minions, right? So they're kind of all the way up the lane as if they're in the middle, drawing a straight line from the enemy minions through your minions. What you are doing is you are last hitting from the optimal position. So there are a couple reasons that this is the optimal position. So what I'd like you to do is something we did earlier. Do me a favor, switch to the drone view. And then put your camera so that it's pretty much staring right through your head. Right, as if you were looking through the eyes of your character, or as if you were seeing what you saw when you were in that third-person view.
Okay, so if I go drone and I'm free, how do I get down to her head level?
All right, so you can press the Q button to go down, E goes up, and then W, A, S, and D will go forward, backward, left, right. So you can go, W to go a little bit forward, Q to go a little bit down, and then you can click in the middle with your mouse and drag while you're clicking, and that will allow you to change the direction that you're facing.
Okay, we're good to go.
Cool. All right, so let's look at what you can see from here. And again, this is kind of an abstraction of what you would see in the normal over-the-shoulder view, but since we can't necessarily do exactly that, I think this is a pretty good approximation. So what you see here is you are looking out. Not only are you close enough to be able to last hit the minions, which is important, right? You're not positioning yourself super far away. But what you can see, and what's really important here, is you can see the fog wall. So in your vision, without having to change your camera angle, you can see the minions, so you know when to last hit. You can see the fog wall all the way around the corner. And you can see up and to your left a little bit. All you have to do is turn a few degrees and you can see up and to your left, so you'd see anyone that's coming through the backside. So this is important for a couple of reasons. One, you're still close enough to be able to last hit the minions. And you're also close enough that if your decker landed a good stun and the enemy offlaner was up near the edge of their tower, right, you'd be a lot closer just in terms of the distance that you need to travel coming from this outside and having to take a few steps forward and a few steps in than you would if you were all the way back in line with the minions. The other reason this is important is that if someone comes through the jungle, you're going to see them right away the moment they come through this fog wall. Let's say the jungler tries to go for an early gank, or the mid, right? Especially like an early howitzer. Is super dangerous because bounce mine can put you in a super dangerous position, right? You need to be able to see them as fast as possible, react to it as fast as possible. And it's better to have your back to this wall so that no one comes behind you. Everyone comes from either your left or your right, or right in front of you. Now what we can do in the inverse is we can flip over to kind of position your camera so that it's behind the decker. And again, this is not the decker's. The decker didn't do anything wrong. The decker's not in a bad position, but let's just imagine that the decker was instead you, right? And that you are a carry from that particular position. And look at what you can see. And this is kind of where a lot of people will last hit from is they will last hit from, forward or in the middle of the lane, things like that. So let's look back over the decker's head. So what can the decker see if you're back over the decker's head? The decker can see forward, right? It can see the minions. But if someone comes from back and from the top side through your jungle, you're not going to be able to see it from there. If someone comes from the fog wall, you're not going to be able to see them until they come around the corner and they're already in your face. So this is incredibly important to be able to position yourself so that even though you're a little bit off kilter where you are right now, you have this vision and you've got this reaction time. You're buying yourself 1, 2, 3 seconds of extra reaction time. If you're positioned closer to where this Decker is as a carry, and a Grux comes around the corner at level 1, level 2, right, they're going to show up, and you're going to realize they're there when you're already in their pull range.
Yeah, especially if you're trying to last hit, right? Because so right now at 1 minute and 43 seconds, Decker is looking over to the fog wall, and Decker can see about 50% of that fog wall. However, if you were the carry, you're not going to be looking over there. You're going to be trying to last hit. Yes. And so this is a situation where you would be caught completely off guard and probably get smoked here.
Yes. And again, it's not that the Decker is in a bad position.
Right.
Just assuming that you were in the same position that the Decker is as a carry. Right. It forces you, sitting on that inside of the lane, forces you to look to the outside of the lane to last hit, right? The same view that you've got right now on your screen, which means that you are not looking at the threats that are coming out of the fog wall. You are not looking at the threats that could be coming up from behind through your own jungle. Whereas where you're positioned right now is exactly right, which is that you are able to look at the fog wall, you're able to see from the left side of your peripheral vision, you're able to see enemies coming up through the backside, and you're still able to last hit, and you're able to turn on the enemy much quicker than if you are positioned all the way at the lane.
Can you tell us where you would like to have seen this Decker?
So the Decker is actually not in a bad position for the Decker. So the Decker is in a pretty good position for a support player. Which is to say, close enough to be able to poke, close enough to be able to land a stun. So I think that it is actually both of you are in a pretty decent position right now. Both of you are in pretty optimal positions, I think. So the thing with the Decker, right, especially given how buggy the stun is you want to be close, you want to be able to secure those stuns early on, because a stun early on doesn't necessarily mean a kill the first time, but maybe the second or third stun you hit is a kill. So positioning yourself right here is not bad, because this means that as soon as this Greystone does come out of this jungle, the Decker's going to be in a position to get some pokes, to get some stuns, and then you're going to be able to turn then on that Greystone, apply a bunch of damage, and then you can start to freeze the wave.
Okay, and not to kind of like nitpick it or anything, but I mean, would it be acceptable to have the Decker or your support, I guess in this situation, having the stun basically a little further down the steps, maybe not in river, but like maybe in the grass after the steps, before river, and with her back against the wall, like basically just like just down a little bit further than where the Yin is positioned. This way you have complete vision on the fog wall. If Greystone comes up, you can still land a stun there and protect.
Absolutely.
That's okay. All right.
Absolutely. I think, as long as you're within that arc as the Decker, right? The Decker's got a little bit more time than the carry does to react. So the Decker, the viewing angle doesn't have to be quite as perfect for the Decker, especially because, again, she's going to be looking into the tower as opposed to at the minion wave. So the viewing angle doesn't have to be totally perfect for the Decker, because she does have that stun, she's got a slow, she's got a jump, she's got a little bit more in the way of disengaged tools. But the thing with any support early on is goal number one at level 1 is to get a kill, because the odds of getting ganked at level 1 are pretty low in most mid to upper level games. So she wants to position herself in the best position to, 1, not affect the wave too much, 2, poke out the Greystone whenever possible, and 3, look for those stuns and those opportunities to combo with you to really get large chunks of damage on the enemy.
Okay.
And again, you don't have to kill the enemy right away, but just getting them low enough that they've got to back up and they miss farm and they miss experience is important.
Okay, so positioning the carry, for farm, like this is something that although I was doing it at this moment, I'm not going to take credit like, oh yeah, I do this all the time. This was just happenstance. So, but it's something that, again, I think it's important, just like everything else that we've discussed up to this point, is like, have like your steps laid out. But if you're going to farm the wave, make sure that, if you have a situation where you can have either a tower to your back so you're not going to get flanked from there, or have the wall to your back so that you can use your periphery to know if somebody's coming through, like on your gold side or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, so I think that that for sure. I think anytime you can cut out one direction that you have to worry about, it's a good thing, right? Anytime you put yourself in a position that you only have to focus on what's in front of you, it's a good thing. Because even the best players will lose track of what's behind them, right? Or what's just outside their peripheral vision. So positioning yourself so that your vision is optimal, I think is really important. This is something that actually I've got a note in game 2 when you're taking OP and when you're taking other objectives. Positioning yourself, very similar to what we're doing here, right? We're going to touch on that, which is to say that you always want to be in a position where, as long as it's not affecting anything else, as long as you can still do what you're trying to do, it doesn't hurt to put yourself to get the best vision possible, what's happening, so that it's happening in front of you and not behind you. It gives you more time to react. It gives you, better positioning to be able to escape if you need to or engage if you need to.
Okay, and then there's 2 questions in chat. Well, one of them is a statement, which we covered a little bit earlier, but I think John, our DVS, may not have been here or not been paying attention or just didn't hear us. But so he was saying poking messes up the wave, though, Covert. That's why I hate poking. So, and he knows that it annoys me. So, anyway, but when I mentioned that to you, what you said was, as you go pulling the wave back, then you zone the Greystone so that as you're poking him, the support that is doing the poking and the zoning is far enough away from the wave that the wave doesn't turn around to go on her or him. And at the same time, the other thing you mentioned was zoning and poking. You don't necessarily need to be poking. You just need the threat of the poke so that they concede or they retreat into their tower. And as I go pulling the wave back, then you can start encroaching back up the steps and always keeping him out of range to be able to earn that XP.
Exactly. So we showed a few minutes ago the clip where you got a good engage and then both you and the support retreated back to your tower. So that was a situation in which, if the support had remained there, would have been able to plant themselves near the river buff, had a good health advantage on the Greystone, and also would have been far enough forward to not draw any minion aggro and not affect the wave at all. The other thing to consider is kind of doing aggro resets, and if you're, as long as it's the second wave or so, and as long as it's not the very first wave where it's super touchy and you really want to worry about every little bit of damage that you're doing, what you can do as a support is you can get a stun, poke them a couple times, and then take a couple steps back. So if the minions are attacking you and you retreat behind your minion line, the enemy minions will immediately turn back and start firing on your minions. So what you can do is you can get a good stun, you can get some poke, and then you can take 2 or 3 steps back, and you will only miss one kind of volley of fire from the enemy minions before they re-aggro to your minions. And again, as long as it's the second or third wave or so, it will not affect your push significantly, especially because, again, the push that ended up coming towards you, right, was a really imbalanced wave. There were far more enemy minions than there were your minions, which meant that taking aggro for a second wasn't really a big deal. You can take aggro, take a couple steps back, reset the aggro, and then you're good to go, and then you can go back. And then a lot of it is, like you said, it's imposing your will more so than it is necessarily being dangerous, right? The Decker's not really going to kill a Greystone. What the Decker does do is keep the Greystone's health low enough so that if the Greystone was to try and come out, the Decker and the Yin together would kill him. So, the Decker is not trying to secure a killing blow. The Decker is trying to make the Yin scarier. The Decker is trying to keep the Greystone in a position where he would rather not fight 2 people. And he would rather just kind of sit there in the back and try and eke out whatever little bits of experience he can.
Okay, and then the other question, and again, we could just gloss over this, but phase. If you have a phase instead of a Decker, in terms of positioning, would you not prefer to have the phase behind the carry tethered so that if there's a situation you can pull him out? And since phase has the I forgot what it's called now, but the ability to slow and root as an engage method, could you not have your phase behind the Yin at that point? And if the Greystone comes out, you can then root him there. I mean, you're not zoning per se if you're behind.
So this is something we were going to talk about or I was going to talk about in the second game. Because in the second game, you do play with the phase support.
Okay.
So in the second game, your phase support takes her tether first, which I do not necessarily agree with. I think, again, level 1, the odds of you dying without some crazy gank where you get bopped into tower or things like that from a Howitzer mine are pretty low. So what I like phases to take, and what I do when I play phase is take the slow first and look for the level 1 kill. Because again, level 1 is the best that you're going to have, except for level 15 in terms of the level discrepancy between you and the offlaner. Because there are two of you at level 1 in the duo, and there's only one person in the off lane. He's going to build up experience faster. So getting the level 1 ganks is, I think, really crucial. So taking that slow and that root, I think, is super powerful, especially if you got someone like a Revenant, right? The Revenant can take their Obliterate level 1. If you get a phase slow into a root, a couple shots, in hands from the phase, a couple shots from the Revenant, and then go into the Obliterate, right? The super huge Q, where I think it's square on PS4 ability on Revenant. I mean, you can just about kill someone level 1 early on. I think once you get to level 2, then you can start to play a little bit further back as phase. But again, level 1, the discrepancy between someone who's going to build damage and someone who's not going to build damage is very low at level 1 because no one's built anything yet. Right. Okay. So, yeah. Supports hit for, 35. Some of the tank supports hit for 40 plus, which is the same as offlaners. There's no reason not to be using your basic attacks to do damage as a support, because you're going to be doing a lot of damage, or at least you're going to be doing just about as much damage as they can do to you, except there are two of you.
Okay. Roger.
Cool. All right, so let's move on to the next thing. So this is where we start to get into kind of positioning and matchup. So we're going to skip ahead by quite a ways. So this is let's see. Let me get you an exact timestamp for you to flip to. Let's find covert. And okay, so do me a favor. Go to 18 minutes and 50 seconds.
Okay, I'm at 16:47. I'm 47. I'm gonna do that again. It was 18 what? 50
no,
seconds?
16:47 is fine.
Oh, 16:47. I'm sorry.
16:47 on the top clock is fine.
Okay.
Okay. I'm at 18:52 on my replay clock. So if you're at 16:4, which it looks like you're 18:52 as well. So 18:52 is a pretty solid one. So this is just going to. This is going to be an engagement-disengagement thing. So let's talk about the situation right here. So you're in a Decker cage. You've already lost a lot of health. Sereth has ulted. So what's really important about Sereth's ult is if she hits you with your ultimate, or with her ultimate, she inflicts a condition where she takes a lot less damage from you because you've got that kind of special burn on you. This means that Sereth is probably the single scariest 1v1 character in the entire game, next to maybe Greystone. And it also means that you need to be very careful about when you're engaging. So this is what's going to happen here, and you're going to see, is you've got the opportunity to get out if you just turn and run. You just hold down the W key or hold down the forward on your PS4 controller and just sprint through your jungle and sprint to safety. Instead, what happens is you slow down, get a few auto attacks off, and then try and re-engage the Sereth, and then you get bopped pretty quickly. So this is a situation where we were talking about the kill hierarchy, right? So the Sereth is the enemy jungler. Because she's playing a Sereth, I would elevate her to, certainly at least a 3, maybe a 4, but you're a 5. Remember, we're talking, no matter what, you are a carry, and you dying is not worth trading unless you're trading for another carry that's further ahead than you are.
Can we stop there for a second just to talk about the kill hierarchy? So,
yes.
So when we're talking about the kill hierarchy, we're talking about a mathematical equation here where each player is worth a certain amount of points. And so if you get into a fight and you kill let's say, you know, the support, the offlaner, and the jungler in a standard team comp, basically you're looking at, you just got 6 points, right? That's what that's worth to you. But now
Right.
if they kill your carry there and your support, then that's the equivalent of you getting those 3 kills. Now,
Right.
so if we look at the enemy team comp here, the Revenant we're gonna say is 5, right? And then
Right.
you're saying, and I was gonna, like, as you were talking about it, I was thinking, okay, Seraph is their 4,
She's probably their 4, yes.
Gideon's gonna be their 3,
Yep.
Greystone's gonna be 2, and their Decker is worth 1 point. So
Exactly.
okay, so whenever we're talking about these fights, then like we have to do the math on it. So whenever we win a fight or we lose a fight, then we've got to do the math on it and say, okay, well, how bad of a fight was this? And we can just put a number on it. Okay.
Right.
I'm good.
So this is a case where, you know, we can look at what's happening in this fight and what's happening in the rest. If you want to switch to drone, you can just kind of peek. So the enemy Gideon is pretty low, and your Chimera is on him, so that's good. The Decker put her ult down, but she's kind of out of the fight, so that's pretty good. So the rest of your team is in a pretty good position. Your Decker is right next to you, and you are really the only one that is in serious danger on your team. It's a 3v3 right now, but you're the only person that really could die in this situation. You know, again, your Chimera, level 8 Chimera is pretty scary, especially against a Gideon that's got no health, and the Seraph is looking at you. So what should happen here is you run away, you live, and then you pick up certainly a Gideon on the enemy team, which is good, and then maybe even a Decker, or worst case scenario, you pick up the Gideon and then you turn back on the Seraph, or maybe you just get the Gideon and no one else, and it's still, you know, it's still a win. But you want to look for, too often in team fights, people try and look for an all or nothing. And I think the marginal wins, the higher you get, the more you start to look for the marginal wins. Take your kill and get out. Take your, you know, team fight win and get out. And this is a case in which, you know, you probably should have taken the win, taken the free kill on the Gideon and just run.
Okay.
And what ends up happening is I think you do pick up the Gideon, but then you die, which is your first death. You know, you do have a kill already, but it's going to put you behind in farm, and farm is super important right now, especially when you are, you know, facing a Revenant who's a very, very scary hero, and one that you don't want to get too late. So we're going to play this just so people get a chance to see this.
Okay.
And you can flip to whatever view we want. So we'll play it in 3, 2, 1, play. So she has her leap already, and Decker gets a stun. So that was your opening. John RDVF made a great play, and you turned around, and did you see how you kind of started to walk back and then turned around and walked back in?
Yep.
And you can pause it wherever there.
Okay.
So your team was able to pick up the enemy Seraph, but a second after you died, right? And there were 3 of your teammates there, so they would have been able to finish that. But even killing the enemy Seraph and the enemy Gideon, so you pick up, you know, 4 points and 3, so you pick up 7 points and lose 5 points, where if you had just kept walking, you would have picked up 7 points for nothing. You would have gotten the equivalent of a carry and an offlaner, for instance.
Right. Well,
right.
To make matters worse, our Faye is dead as well. I don't know in what sequence she dies, but technically it ends up being a 7
That's
for
true.
7 there. So,
You're right.
So it's even worse than just a 5 to 7 there, or a 7 to 5 ratio.
I didn't even notice that your Faye's died. So it is at worst or at best an even trade, whereas it could have been a big win, right? You sacrifice your offlaner, but you pick up their jungler who needs farm and their mid laner. You know, could have been a pretty big win for you. So this is a situation where I think it is important to understand what level of support you have, right? And especially, you know, if you're on comms with anyone, or even if you're not, knowing that you've got 3 teammates right there and you don't have to be the one to get the kill. It is better to be, you know, 1-0-1 as the yin, right, with an assist and be alive to continue farming, than it is to maybe be 2-0-0 or maybe be 1-1-0. You know, it is far more important to stay alive, keep that farm up, and pick up some extra CXP because of the assist, than potentially give up a death for no reason. And I really think that, again, recognizing those situations is really important, and playing safe. It's important to play conservative as a carry. You look at the best carries in the game. You look at people like Imsko. You look at people like Suki. You look at people like iCameron. All those players that are legendary in this game for their ability to play carry. Sure, they hit shots at a really high rate, but the reason they're great carries isn't because they hit shots. It's because they are so hard to kill, because they stay in just long enough, and as soon as they are in a position where they might get killed, they peace out. Okay. Because they understand that it is better to stay alive, keep farming, and pick up an assist than it is to try and go all in and get 10 kills but have 10 deaths too.
Okay. And Chad is right. This is something that I struggle with early on. So this is my first MOBA. So one of the things that I struggled with early, when I first played this game back in June, I had a brief stint with the game, maybe May, June timeframe of 2016. And I died a lot because I didn't understand the concept of card power or any of this stuff. I just thought you go out and you try to kill people, So then I learned oh wow, you've got to run away. And I caught a lot of flack early for not being there. And so I've become hypersensitive to oh, you should have been there, or we needed you there. You shouldn't have. So that, and the truth is I have my mentality, or I don't know, I guess my heart is I'll die for teammates. In any game that I play, right? I don't see it as a sacrifice, but I will give myself for my teammates at no matter what. And so a lot of times I'll turn around because as a carry, I'll try to save my support, and they're like, dude, just leave me alone. Let me die, And I'm like, no, but I didn't want you to die. I thought I could have helped you get out. So it's a personal flaw in a sense. But it is a problem that I have, and hopefully I can correct it with, and I just if we, just on Thursday, I took notes. I'm taking notes here, and I'm going to re-review this stuff and try to, take these pointers and get better at them.
Yeah, and I think that, again, depending on the role that you're playing, going back in and saying, no, let me be there for you, I think is important. The thing with carry is you really have to be as selfish as possible. When you're a carry, and this may annoy some junglers, but when you are a carry, any farm that you can get, or any time that you feel like you need to peace out, you are pretty much entitled to it. You don't want to steal all your farm from a jungler, but if you want to take some white camps, you take some white camps, right? If you feel like you might die, you turn around and you back up. If you, want to get the last hit in mid lane when you're passing through mid lane, it's okay to do that. Carry, you really have to think me. I need my farm as fast as possible, as safely as possible. If you're playing someone that's either a support or a setup jungler, setup off lane, that's when you go back in. That's when you kind of, play Secret Service. That's when you kind of dive in front of the bullet and you re-engage to secure that kill. But carry, really, you really want to be safe. You want to be, basically, you kind of want to be wimpy, and you want to be selfish, right? You want to err on the side of caution. You don't really want those, as another notch would say, those BDPs, those those big plays where you really dive all in and you really try and 1v5 the enemy team. I think it is far better to just farm up, hit 60 way before anyone else does, and then get to a point where you really can 1v5 the enemy team, rather than trying to do it early.
Okay, fair enough.
Cool.
So I should have left, and I should have turned around and left. That's the thing there.
Yes. Okay. You should have turned around and left. So let's talk a little bit about CS. So you actually did a pretty decent job of CS in this game. At the point that we're at right now, I think you died with 72 CS
Yeah.
at the 17-minute mark, which is actually pretty in line. So I'm going to touch on this kind of very briefly because I know it's a question that I certainly get a lot. And is not a hard and fast rule, but people like to have numbers. They like to have solid numbers. So this is the set of numbers that I use. 100 CS by 20 minutes is the standard for where you should be if you want to be a competitive carry.
Okay.
Top carries are going to be hitting 105, 110, 115. And for those who are unfamiliar, CS, if you if you press tab and go to the menu, it's that first bar is those first numbers, and it refers to creep score. So creep score is the number of creeps, as they're called from other MOBAs, or in this case minions, that you have secured the last hit on. So getting the last hit and being the one to kill the minion is important, because the person who last hits is the one who gets the card experience, who gets the points that can then use it to build items. So when I'm talking to people, one of the hardest parts in a game for carries in terms of getting their CS really tends to be in this 15 to 25 minute range. Early in the game, it's pretty easy because everything is happening in lane. You're just kind of sitting in your lane. You're farming forever. That's fine. When you start to get to this 12, 15 minute, 17 minute mark, you start to see a little bit more in the way of team fights. There's more rotations to river buffs. You're starting to look at, hopefully you will have done raptors by that point. And a lot of people will be running off to try and be in every single team fight and forget about continuing to farm and continuing to build up minions. And I think it's really a very critical range to continue to last hit and continue to get minion hits, because if you are running around trying to look for fights and you don't get any, and the enemy is just sitting in lane, freezing the lane, or just pushing out waves forever, they're going to start to build up a big advantage over you. And when you start to get into these really important team fights in the 20-minute, 25-minute range, where a couple kills means free raptors or even a free orb prime or free towers, maintaining that creep score rate is really important. So we don't need a replay section or anything for this, but it is something that I want to talk about, which is trying to really force yourself to keep that creep score rate up. Try and hit 100 CS by 20 minutes, or try and hit 110 CS by 20 minutes, things like that. Try and really focus on ensuring that your farm is built out of creep score as your backbone, and that kills are just a bonus.
So now, would it stand to reason that at 10 minutes you should be at 50, or is that not possible?
So you can. I think it is technically possible if you last hit every minion and you are just sitting in lane. I think if you are at about 40 or so by 10 minutes, that's pretty solid. Anything above 40 by 10 minutes, I consider to be pretty good. Anything above 70, 75 by the 16, 17 minute mark is good, and then anything above 100 by the 20-minute mark I think is good. And again, if any of you are watching the PCL or any of the other competitive tournaments and you're looking at the creep score, a lot of times with the best players you'll see them hit 120, 125 creep score by the 20, 22-minute mark, because they're really focusing on trying to maintain the creep score as the backbone of their farm. So if you assume that the enemy carry is just as good as you at getting that creep score, then the kills start to make up the difference. But you really don't want to have to rely on kills to keep up with an enemy that's just sitting in lane and farming.
Okay.
Especially because, again, a kill is worth about a minion wave, more or less. If you last hit every minion in a minion wave, you're going to get about the same level, more or less. You're going to get pretty close to the same level of card experience that you would get for a kill. Close enough that, if you're missing 2 minion waves to try and get 1 kill, it's usually not worth it.
And with the advent of gold buff now, you're probably pretty close, right? Like if you're taking all the golds and taking the minion waves, you'd be there.
So gold buff is not going to give you a higher CS, but it is going to give you more card XP. Okay. But it does give you more incentive to stay in lane, right?
Right.
And you're right in that it does fill in the gap, right? If you get 700 card experience for killing a wave, and then you pick up a gold buff, that's another 300, right? That's 1,000. That's pretty much what you would get for a kill. So it does give you, I think that the recent changes to gold buff has been really good because it does give more incentive to be in lane more often.
Okay. If you, I know you're in chat. I need to take a really quick break for the restroom. I'll be back in 2 minutes. And if chat wants to send some questions your way, I'll leave the mic hot here, and then you can answer those questions or just like say terrible things about me. Okay.
Awesome. I'm actually going to do the same thing and grab myself a beer real quick so we can reconvene. And then if I get here first, I'll answer some questions.
All right.
So feel free to fire those questions, chat, and I will answer them shortly.
All right. Perfect. I'll be right back, boys. I'm just gonna, you know me. I'm old. Be back. All right.
All right. All right, let's look at some of these questions right here.
All right, I'm back.
How much farm is equivalent to kill? So the tire fryer, usually about a wave and a half or so. And this also, I think, answers Gaeleg's question. About a wave and a half is equivalent to a kill, which really is, I think most people would think that a kill would be worth far more than that. It actually, kills, as valuable as kills are, and kills are certainly valuable, getting an entire wave's worth of last hits is huge and is an enormous amount of farm, especially when you start to get later in the game and the waves start to get bigger.
The other thing to take into consideration there, aren't there diminishing returns if you're abusing on an enemy as well? Like so
yeah, so they've got win streaks or kill streaks and death streaks. So if a player has died 4 or 5 times in a row without getting a kill or an assist, the more deaths that they get without contributing to a kill or assist, the less they're going to be worth. So you can't necessarily totally beat up on one enemy. And conversely, a player that has gotten 4 or 5 kills in a row is going to be worth a lot. So it makes it all the more valuable if you've gotten a number of kills to try and not put yourself in a dangerous situation. So let's see, other questions. We talked about ADC laning strategy, specifically lane freezing. What are some off-lane strategies to counter that? Okay, so one thing that's really important in the off lane, first of all, it's important to focus early on. I think a lot of players focus too much on dangerous farming early on, and they end up getting blown up at level 1, level 2, things like that. It's important to make sure that you're focusing as much as possible on experience. But then when you start to get to a point where you feel like you could be more aggressive, or if you're playing a caster where you can kind of poke from further away without having to be right up against there, the best thing you can do to flip a lane freeze is to push a wave into the enemy tower. So what's going to happen? So again, the whole point of a freeze is that the waves are supposed to be pretty much even, except a little bit, you want the enemy wave to be a little bit stronger so that it will last longer than your wave. If you're an offlaner and you can push a wave all the way into the enemy tower, the tower is going to do a lot of work to kill your wave, which is good, which means that the wave is going to start pushing back towards you, and then you can start to freeze, and you can start to take control of the lane back. Let's see, last question. Just started learning Morrigesh today and did terrible, fed like heck. I know now that I was being too aggressive in offlane and I got ganked hard, but in team fights I didn't know my position, where to be, who to target, tips. Okay, so Morrigesh is interesting. So Morrigesh is not your typical mid lane mage in that she doesn't have a big area ultimate. She's not like Bellica with the big bomb. She's not like Gadget with the big bombs with the ultimate, or Howitzer, or things like that. Morrigesh is really about kind of floating around the edge of a fight, picking out one target and abusing them. So what you can do with Morrigesh, and her strongest combo is that Mark, that close range ability where you convert them to your voodoo doll, and then throwing on your, I think it's the Hive is what it's called, which does the kind of ticking damage, and then using that ultimate. And between those three, you're going to be able to do a whole lot of damage. So don't try and stand there in the middle. Don't try and front line. Don't try and distribute the damage. Instead of trying to just do a little bit of damage to everyone, pick one person and focus on them. And ideally, you want to focus either on the enemy caster or the enemy carry, or in the case of someone like a FaZe, right, a very valuable support, you could focus on the enemy support to get an easy kill. Try not to put yourself in a dangerous situation, because again, a lot of the damage from that Hive comes over time. So you run close, get that mark, throw your Hive, and then dash away and let the Hive do all the work. And then you can ult them right after that and pick up the kill. All right, you want to get back into it, Covert?
Let's do it, buddy.
Awesome. All right, so let me find the next thing to talk about. OP fight positioning. Okay, so let's do this. So I had a couple notes about not fighting a Greystone. That's kind of the same thing as not fighting a Seraph, right? You really, especially as a carry, especially as Yin, where you've got to be in melee range, generally you don't want to fight a Greystone. You fight a Greystone when you've got a lot of CC with you, when you've got, some casters that can really get through, especially now that he no longer has that extra health, and now it's just basic attack focus. You want to focus on a Greystone when you've got teammates that could burst him down, and you really don't want to try and fight him, especially when he has that ultimate. And for players that are maybe newer to facing a Greystone, you can tell when an enemy Greystone has his ultimate by whether his armor is glowing. You will see, and you can actually see in this frozen picture right now, a kind of like red fire shield on the back of Greystone. Mm-hmm. That tells you that Greystone has his ultimate, and therefore you want to kind of stay away and not engage in 1v1. So let's talk about this OP fight. So this is 37 on the overhead. So let me find you an exact marker. 36. Here we go. Okay. So let's go to, do me a favor, go to 38 minutes and let's say 38 minutes and 55 seconds.
Okay, I'm at 36.50 on the overhead.
36.50, that's perfect. All right. So the situation we're looking at right here, we're looking at, you are fighting Orb Prime along with the rest of your team. Orb Prime is pretty low. You're actually in a pretty decent position for fighting Orb Prime. Kind of what we were talking earlier, how you got your back to a wall, which is good, and you're actually you're facing out towards where the enemies would come in. I'd probably move 1 or 2 steps over to your left, and be, still against that wall and still have the Chimera be the primary target, but that would allow you to look out a little bit better. But I think what I wanted to talk about here was the position that you put yourself in this ensuing team fight.
Okay.
So you guys are able to clear out. You guys are able to clear out that orb prime, which is good. But what we're going to do is we're going to play this for a few seconds, and what you're going to see happen is you're going to see that you end up being the farthest out and the closest to the enemies, whereas the rest of your team is going to be behind you.
Okay.
So we're going to play this for a few seconds, and then I'm going to tell you to pause it, and then we're going to look at where you're positioned, where the rest of your team is.
Okay.
When we pause it. So we're going to play it in 3, 2, 1, play. All right. So you're close to finishing up Orb Prime. You've got your Decker out there. You've got everyone else. You finish the Orb Prime. Decker Cage goes down. You get a really good Gideon ult. Forces the Greystone ult. So let's pause it right about here.
Okay. I have Gideon ulting us now.
Right. So let's look at where you are right now, and let's look at where the enemy is. So you've got a Gideon right on top of you. You've got a Greystone ult that's coming down right on top of you, and you've got a Decker that's behind you.
Mm-hmm.
So it is good that you were able to take out that Seraph early, but the problem that you are running into, or that you are going to run into right now, is that you are positioned right in the center of everything. And even just a second before, when you were hadn't quite been pulled quite so far, again, you are the farthest out, which means, one, you're the primary target for the enemy Decker, because you're going to be right in front of her, right? And if she's going to be able to stun you inside of a Gideon ultimate, even if you've got Blink Charm, you're not going to be able to get at it. So that's not great. Two, you've positioned yourself in a position where you are between the enemy Greystone and the enemy Decker. So you can't go, you really have no place to go, right? If you go back towards your team at this point, you're running into the Greystone. And if you run away, you're running into the Decker. Mm-hmm. So where you really want to be when this fight is happening is you really want to hug that corner. You want to be back close to, do you see where your Decker is, actually where your Gideon is right now?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Where Suspense is?
Yes.
That's really where you want to be. You want to put yourself up against that wall so that no one is behind you, and that you don't have to worry about anyone else except what you see in front of you. And this is something that I was playing against Imsco today earlier, and this is exactly what he did. He put his back to the wall so that he could shoot anything that was in front of him, and nothing would get him from the back. Okay. So I think you do end up dying from this Gideon ultimate. I'm just going to play it for a few seconds. Yeah, you do end up dying from the Gideon ultimate. So this is a case where, like we were talking, you've got the Blink Charm or the Blink Shot, but you don't end up using it in this case, where you might have used it if you had a Blink Charm. Okay. But if you had positioned yourself further to the back, in another situation, again, it's not necessarily applicable here, but I think in another situation where maybe their Revenant was over here, or they had more of their players over there. I think that having that back to the wall is very important to be able to maintain that sense that you can just shoot whatever you see. You don't have to think about getting stunned from the back. You don't have to think about worrying who's behind you. So you just shoot what's in front.
So this game's several weeks old now, but
right.
So in this instance, we took OP, right? And right. I see them, they're there now. And my thought was, let me get up the steps and into like the beginning of our weak side jungle so I can retreat out of this. Because I don't want to fight here. We just got OP. I kind of want to like regroup, because obviously we're all chunked down pretty good from OP. So let's try to pull out of this situation. So... But
what probably should have happened is your team probably should have backed off except for you, and your team should have engaged the enemy as soon as the enemy stepped in, so that the fight was happening not quite so deep into the pit.
Okay.
Which deep in that pit is prime Gideon ultimate territory, right?
Right.
So it is a situation where, again, not to harp on it too much, but Blink Charm would have gotten you out. Blink Charm, you would have been able to blink to those steps, and you would have been able to walk into your weak side jungle.
Okay.
Blink Shot, which you could have used to get away, but you didn't because you knew that it had the longer cooldown, right? And you didn't want to waste a blink shot without getting a kill. That's why you didn't use it. You ended up taking a death for it because you didn't want to use your blink ability.
Well, there was 2 instances in this game where when I realized what was happening, I started turning around, and as I was like trying to activate blink shot, I was dead. So like my reaction time on it was slow. So
that's something, and I think this is something that might be useful for everyone. And I'm not sure whether you do it. You probably do, but putting your abilities, your quick toggle abilities, your first 4 slots of your build on the same buttons every time.
Yeah.
So whether it's up, down, left, and right on the PS4 controller, I think you've got it rebound to QREF. Whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4 on a standard PC layout, having it so that you always know. For me, it's always 3. It's always the number 3. All I have to do is turn around, press 3, and click, and I know that I set my blink charm up so that we'll be in 3, and it's much easier for that muscle memory.
Right.
And it's much easier to be able to just turn and do that without having to think.
I normally have it on my R because my finger's always on D, so that's like the quickest that I can get there. And I don't know what happened in this game that it wound up being E, but normally it is on R. But yes, I mean, that definitely helps for sure.
Yeah, so it's something that I think is just a little tip. The same thing applies if you play a lot of supports, right? And you're always running like an Honor the Pure and a Quenching Scales and wards and things like that. Trying to build it so that your build's consistent every game and you've got the same actives on the same buttons every game is going to make it feel like an ability where you don't even have to, with a hero that you played a lot, you don't even have to think about pressing the button for the correct ability because you've done it so much. You kind of think of them as another 4 abilities that you've got,
right?
Where you want that muscle memory to be there.
Okay. So good to note there. I should have immediately put myself with my back to the wall there and tried to let my team frontline. I could have used my my whiplash ability to put damage out. I mean, I think I still don't get out of there if I put my back to the wall, but I could be wrong.
You probably don't. So this is a case where, again, it is an example to illustrate a point, not necessarily
Gotcha.
A direct application.
Okay. Because suspense is as far as you can get in that scenario, and he's still. You could see the
he's
link.
Still taking damage.
Yeah, he's still got the link.
Right.
So, but I understand where you're going with it for sure, 100%.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So we are almost done with this match, and then we can take a little break if you want to, and then we can get into match 2 and roll through that.
Okay.
So let's talk about. Let's see. 45, 30 in game would be. Let me get you a timestamp real quick. Skip ahead to that. Okay, here we go.
What's up, Dave Battle? Welcome back, man.
Let's do 47-35.
Okay, I am at 45-30 in game.
Perfect. So this is another positioning thing.
Okay.
It's looking at where you are versus where you should be.
Okay.
So where you are right now is you're the frontmost player on your team of the 3 of you. You are the one that is most asking for damage.
Okay.
Which is a dangerous place to be as a carry. You're looking at the enemy Revenant right in front of you. You've got an enemy Decker, you've got an enemy Gideon, and there's a Greystone that's lagging a little bit behind that. And then you've got 2 of your allies coming in from the side. You've got your Decker to your side, and you've got your Gideon to your side as well. But what's going to happen is your allies are going to back off, and you're going to take a couple steps forward, and you're going to be right in front of the enemy. And you're going to take a pretty nasty Decker stun, and then you're going to take a pretty nasty Gideon ultimate. And it's not going to end well for you. Okay. So this is another case where I think communication would have helped. If you were, having more players on comms is certainly always useful, and having those players tell you when you should, maybe run versus try and engage. But it's also something that you can try and be aware of even when you're playing a solo queue game, which is try to never be in front of your support. Try and never engage unless you know you've got help. So we're going to play this, and again, this is going to be very similar to the Seraph play. You're going to see an opportunity to live where you turn around and run right back in.
Okay.
So we're going to play this in 3, 2, 1, play. So you do take a step back, and then all of a sudden you run right back in forward, and you can see your team is behind you. You take a big fat Decker stun, and then Gideon's able to ult right on top of you, and there's nothing you can do to get out.
Right.
For the 1000th time, I'll harp on the fact that you can look and see your blink shot cooldown was 30 seconds away, which meant that if it was a blink charm, the cooldown would have been done, and you would have been able to blink out of that.
So it was down for, I still had 30 seconds on it.
You had 30 seconds on the blink shot, but because the blink charm is a 60-second shorter cooldown, it means that the cooldown would have been out. But that's not the important thing. The important thing here is to understand that really as a carry, you want to be, again, closer to where suspense ends up. You want to be back in the tower, and you want to be able to choose your moment to strike. So when you're a carry, it's very different than if you're playing someone like a fighter, especially like an offlane or a jungle fighter. When you're playing a carry, you really want to be pretty tactical about things. You want to kind of sit back, wait, observe what's happening, poke at what's near you, and then when you see the opportunity, then you go all in.
Okay.
But what I think I see you doing is thinking, I do the most damage on the team, so I should get in there and try and fight. And especially it's tough again as Yin, because she is kind of a melee hero where you have to get closer. But I think that being a little bit more patient and choosing your battles and choosing your engagements a little bit more carefully is going to end up giving you a lot more value, where, even if you are not doing damage for 1 or 2 seconds, when you do start to do that damage, it's going to be a lot more careful, it's going to be a lot more refined, it's going to be a lot more impactful.
So there's definitely there's a thought process that I go through pretty quickly, and it may boil down to bad decision making, which is when I think we should start an engagement, right? So just to take a step back here, so we've got those 3 guys in mid, right? I've got Gideon next to me, and I've got my Decker kind of running away there, right? But I am cognizant of the fact that I have Chimera flanking and Faye. And I'm thinking to myself, we should not be running away from this. We should bracket them and go on this. So my instinct is... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, that's the difference between playing in a full stack of players versus playing in a duo queue or playing solo queue.
Okay.
When you're playing in a full stack of players, you can coordinate it and say, I'm going to back off, I'm going to bait, you come in from the back, and then the other players will say, I'm engaging now, and then that tells you, okay, let's do this. When you're playing solo queue or when you're playing duo queue, it feels bad to say this because they're not, but you have to assume that all of your allies are idiots.
Okay.
And they're not idiots, right? They're normally very smart people that are trying their best as well, and you're trying your best, and you just can't communicate quite the same way. But assume that they're idiots. Do not assume that people will follow you into battle.
Well, in this case, Suspense and John RDVS were on comms with me, but I'm not actively saying go in. It's just my instinct there is we've got the enemy bracketed. We should take advantage of this, I guess, is kind of what I'm thinking there.
So what probably should have happened is you probably should have backed up to tower and waited for your Chimera to be able to get in there. So you've got 2, maybe let's call it 3 real engages on your team. Engage number 1 is a Decker cage. Engage number 2 is a Faye ultimate. And engage number 3 is Chimera just deciding he's going to get in the face of people. Right? You need to wait as a carry for one of those 3 engages. It is important to not be the initiator. To not only not be the initiator, but to actively not be the initiator. You don't want to start the fight.
Okay.
Because the person who starts a fight on the team is the person who draws the attention of the enemy.
Oh, that's
Does
a
that
good
make
point. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
If you are the first person to go in and you are the only person attacking, all of the enemies are going to say, well, they're attacking, so let's turn our stuff on them.
Mm-hmm.
What you want to do as the carry, or this also extends to, again, someone was asking about Morigesh earlier, or any mid laner. You want someone else to take the attention, that your tanky frontliner, your support, whoever it is. If you are the carry, the off laner, or sorry, the carry or the mid laner in particular, you want to sit on the outside and you want to hit the enemy before they realize what's happening and kill them before they have focused you, and then turn on to the next person. And I
Okay.
think that, again, it would have been better in this case to wait an extra few seconds so that your Chimera gets in there, and it either forces the Gideon to run away or forces the Gideon to look at the Chimera, and then maybe you can attack the Gideon. Instead, what happened is you were the only target in front of them, and the Decker and the enemy Decker and the enemy Gideon said, let's do this, let's go in. And they were able to clean you up pretty quickly. Because again, you were the freshest target.
Right. Okay, duly noted. Yep, I'm making a note right now.
Awesome. All right, so last thing we're going to talk about in this game, and then we can take a short break if you want, and then we can get into the next game. And hopefully this hasn't been running. I know we're almost 2 hours in and we haven't even finished the first game, but we'll skip through the second game and kind of hit some important points.
Okay.
This one is about the concept of the difference between flipping and clearing. And I think this is an important point to talk about. So do me a favor, go to 54 minutes even, 54:00.
I'm there. I'm at 51:55 in game time.
Perfect. That is perfect.
Okay.
All right. So this is going to be a situation where you take the time to clear all the enemy minions, and then you rotate to go help with the fight. So if you look at the map at what's happening right now, the enemy team is pushing down mid lane as 5. So you're right in that you've got to deal with this wave, because if you don't, it'll crash into your inhibitor and it'll kill your inhib, right? So it's important to deal with this wave. However, you want to do it as fast and efficiently as possible because you need to get to mid lane. You only have one player down on your team, but your Gideon is over on right lane trying to deal with right lane. You've got your Chimera, and then you've got your Decker, and then you've got you. And really, you need to have all of you available in mid lane to try and turn this fight. So what should happen right here, and what we talk about in which flipping a wave as opposed to clearing a wave. So flipping a wave is taking out all of the enemy ranged minions and you can leave the enemy melee minions. So in Paragon, ranged minions do most of the damage. Melee minions have most of the health. So killing the ranged minions means that the enemy minion wave is not going to do that much damage. And sure, they'll last for a little while, but it's not going to significantly push your wave. Whereas if you just kill the melee minions, the enemy ranged minions are the ones that do most of the damage, so they'll still be able to clear out a lot of your wave. So what should happen here is you should run up, you should just kill the couple big sage minions and then all the ranged minions, and then one, or at least enough of the ranged minions to diminish that wave. You don't even have to kill all the ranged minions. And then run, and then trust that you've cleared enough of the wave there that you can get to mid lane. Instead, you take the time to clear every last minion and then are a little bit late to the wave. So we're going to play this in 3, 2, 1, play. All right, so you run up to the wave, you start to attack the minions that are right in front of you, the melee minions, and then you start to go for the enemy ranged minions. You do clear them, then you turn back to the melee minions, right? Again, you're focusing the less damaging of the minions. Clear every last minion, keep going, okay, there you go. You finally clear every last minion, and by that point, you just lost your Gideon.
Yep.
Right, and you're running over to mid lane.
Mm-hmm.
Now the enemy Revenant, is pushing your right inhibitor, and you've just baited in time there. You run and you leave your middle inhibitor to try and clear the right inhibitor. You're able to save that, but then the enemy just comes running in the mid inhibitor. So you can stop this wherever. Again, this is kind of similar to that OP fight we were talking about. if you had cleared it out properly, which is to say just killing the range minions, and then moving on from there, would it have changed anything? Maybe, maybe not. But it is important to try and do everything to the most efficient, or everything the most efficient way possible, so that in those instances where it does make a difference, you're able to get that value from it.
Okay, so I have a question here. So at that timestamp that you gave me, so that left lane had a full wave that was engaging my minion wave, and then there was another wave coming. So the concept of setting a lane, or I call it setting a lane, you're talking about flipping a lane or a wave.
Yeah, I mean, setting and flipping are pretty much the same thing. Okay. Setting is setting your wave so it will push. Right. Flipping is taking it so that the enemy is pushing, and flipping it so that yours is pushing. So it's the same, functionally the same thing.
Okay, so now in that scenario, with the two waves coming in, are you saying that if I wouldn't have completely cleared those two and instead would have gone in for just the range minions and or the siege minions in both of those waves, it still would have flipped?
Yes, absolutely.
Even though there was two waves coming in to my one?
Yes. Because the damage that your minions would be able to do, and again, so the other thing that you got to think about is, it is not just that the waves are fighting each other. You don't really care about that tier 2. The equation is not your wave versus their waves. The equation is your wave plus your tier 2 plus your inhib versus their waves. Does that flip? Right? All you need to do is clear out enough of their minions so that it is not a threat to your inhibitor, and then you can move over. And as long as that is the case, you can give up your tier 2, right? If their wave still pushes a little bit and gets to the tier 2, your tier 2 will clear a few more of them out. And then by the time it gets to your inhibitor, it'll be too weak to actually do anything.
Okay.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes, that is something I do want to repeat here, because so when it comes to setting the wave, like for example, we lost the game last night. Last night was Sub Sunday, so I was playing with all subs, and we lost a game where part of the thing that I saw happening was we had rotations to lanes where I thought we didn't need to be, because the wave was not it wasn't an imminent threat to us, and the upcoming engagement, or like the setup, the fight that we were setting up was more important, and it would have been more valuable to have everybody with us. Now, in a lot of those cases, I see people rotate into those lanes and they clear the whole thing, and then they're like, okay, it's set. So I understand this concept, but the thing is, because it's something that I see affect us negatively as a channel when we play games together. But in this case, what I want to highlight here is not only is that important, but you see, I didn't realize that if there's two waves coming in like that, if I just kill the siege and the range, and they've now stacked on one another, that eventually my lane will flip, as you said. So I just want to say that again, because I think that's important to understand, not only for myself, but for some of you out there that I know are like, oh, that's pushing on us, we've got to go over there. And I'm kind of like, no, we don't need to worry about that right now. We need to worry about this. So yes, I think that is very, very important. Okay.
Yeah, it's again, you got to think about the ultimate goal, right? The ultimate goal in this case is protect the inhibitors. So you want to clear the wave so that it is not a threat to your inhibitors, and understand that it is okay to again, even if that wave still keeps pushing, if it's pushing slowly, as long as it is not immediately going to take an inhibitor in the next 5 to 30 seconds, and you can focus your efforts on that mid wave and the enemy that's pushing in mid, that's the important thing.
Okay.
It is okay to lose a tier 2 tower at this point if it means that you can save an inhibitor. And that's all you're trying to do. You're just trying to stop the bleeding or slow the bleeding in time to be able to clear out. And Rip X Doc, the range minions of both waves or just the first wave. Ideally, since they're crashing at the same time, I would just take all of the siege minions and call it good. Or all of the siege minions plus as many range minions as I can hit as I'm already turning around and walking away.
Okay. Beautiful.
Cool.
Excellent.
All right. So that is all I got in this first game.
Okay.
I've got a few things in the second game. You know, we can certainly gloss over it. So whether you want to, we could probably knock out this next game in the next half an hour if you want to, or you can take a break and then get at it. It's up to you.
I say we go for it. I mean, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I say we go for it, and then we
game.
can open to questions. I'm actually putting the replay ID in chat, so if anybody actually wants to have the match up on their game, if they have 2 monitors, they can do that. Or if they only have 1 monitor, that's cool too.
Awesome.
Yeah, so yeah, this way everyone can follow along in game and get their own perspective if they'd like.
Cool. All right, so let me pull up the second replay real quick and make sure that we are all good to go. So to set the stage for everyone, so this was a replay from a couple weeks later. So this is a V40 replay, right? And the first one was pre V40, I think. So this is after a couple weeks where I know you've done some pretty intense work. So I know that last game was not your best game. So you know, I want everyone to understand that. Again, I think Covert touched on this earlier. Covert did a lot of things really well in that game that we just went over. The only reason we didn't talk about most of those things is because it's far more valuable, I think, to highlight the areas where you can improve when you're doing a coaching session than to just tell him all of the things that he was doing right and just kind of pat him on the back. Because if he already does it right, then he's already doing it right and he doesn't really need coaching on it. So I don't want you to think that in any way that Covert is not a very solid player, because again, he did a lot of things really, really well in that game. We just picked out a few things from a 55-minute game, but you know, I do think I am certainly, I gotta say, I am impressed with you, my friend, that you are willing to open yourself up this way to 165 people.
Somebody said that in chat earlier, and the truth is, you know, like my wife asked this thing after, like when you and I finished on Thursday, she's like, "What are you gonna do?" So, but you know, I mean, I talk to my wife. My wife every morning sends me a text and asks me how did it go, you know, and I'm like, it went well or it went bad, right? And you know, all too often, a bad night is a night where I just pleb it up really bad. And I've told her, like, my inability to catch on faster has, I know, in some way, shape, or form has hurt the progress of the channel. And that's a really big problem for me because, like, I'm super invested in this, in Twitch in general, and have really, like, put off a lot of other things in order to make this a priority. That's number one. Number two, like, you can see in the chat, and you might not be able to grasp it right away, but these people are here every single night. And, like, it pains me sometimes when I play just terrible. And, like, I feel bad for them because they stay here and endure it. You know, and so, like, I want to put on a good show for them. And sometimes I'm just not capable of it. And so, like, for me, this is enormous to be able to spend time with you, spend time with someone like you that has the amount of knowledge that you do, and you, I didn't even know if you were going to respond to me. So, like, initially I was like, he might not even respond, like, this guy's going to be like, this guy sucks, and, like, why would I spend any time or make an investment in him? And so, like, for me, this is huge. I appreciate you doing this with me, and spending the time, because I'm hoping that I'm able to take all of this information and improve. So, I mean, if the worst of it is that, you know, people are like, wow, that's, like, really bad. Listen, these people are here witnessing this every night. So if it can get better in a hurry, then that's an improvement. So.
Well, I think not just, and it's not just your individual play, but I think that hopefully through a couple of these sessions, you're going to be armed with knowledge that will help out. Because, I mean, you know, even for me, you know, I used to be, you know, top 30 player back when I was playing a whole ton and playing competitive, and I've certainly dropped a lot. And I'm still diamond, but I'm not where I would be. But I coach a lot of players who are a couple hundred points above me in the unofficial rankings, because I think it is understanding and being able to communicate that understanding to people is important. Even if you are not always able to execute it the way that you understand it. Right? I don't execute the way that I draw stuff up. I eviscerate myself when I try and coach myself and do all of this stuff. So I think hopefully it will help you in that you can start to help out a lot of your viewers with a lot of these things that we talk about, even if you're not always able to do all of it on your own.
Gotcha. Roger that.
Cool. All right, so let's talk about this game. So first off the bat, let's talk about team comp. So you're playing Yin again, so that's good. You've got a phase now as your support. So we did talk earlier about the phase taking the slow level 1 and getting that aggression. You're still facing a Greystone in lane, so a lot of the same things still apply. You still want to be aggressive as aggressive as possible against that Greystone, try and keep them down. Both teams have a Bellica, both teams have a phase, both teams have a Chimera, so those are kind of neutralizing. The big difference is the Greystone versus Crunch and Revenant versus Yin. So I think Yin is a very good pick against Revenant right now. Revenant is certainly probably the strongest carry in the game, or close to the strongest carry in the game right now. The thing that Yin offers against Revenant is the ultimate, right? Revenant is super strong because it can fire out a bajillion projectiles.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that Yin allows is she can use her pop that ultimate and at least buy herself some time, if not try and reflect. And I know she doesn't reflect the projectiles back, which I think is a bug, but you can at least reflect them away and buy yourself that little bit. So I think Yin is a good pick against a Revenant in this case. So the one thing you're kind of lacking, though, and the one thing that the Greystone does give you that the Crunch doesn't necessarily give you, is a super tanky front line that can absorb attention and absorb damage. And that's something that really we'll see a little bit later in the game. You guys don't have a true engage the way that you did earlier. Mm-hmm. Right? You don't have a Decker Cage, you don't have a Steel ult, you don't have a Rampage ulting in or jumping in, you don't have a Greystone that just decides to face tank everything. I think it is important to not just have the kill potential, which you certainly have a lot of kill potential. I mean, between Bellica, Yin, Crunch, and Chimera, a lot of kill potential. The one thing your team does struggle for a little bit is kind of that engage, that person that says, I'm going to go ham and start this fight. So we'll touch on that a little bit as we move through this.
So real quick, before you go beyond team comp, so it's a running joke in the channel. I was in the middle of a solo queue game, and I was explaining during the draft that we needed to make some adjustments on the fly here with our team comp, and the response was from one of the solo queuers that was in my draft. The response was, team comp doesn't matter. So we've been talking about making a shirt that says team comp doesn't matter. What would your ideal team comp be right now, and why?
Oof. Oh man. Okay. So let's start with the duo lane. I think it's hard to beat FaZe. I think FaZe is she allows you to pick up the pieces when your team makes stupid mistakes. So, this I love. I'm a huge fan of the Sneaky Paragon brothers. I don't know if anyone in chat has seen their art that they've done. They posted on the subreddit a bunch. They did one of the hero launches. Their most recent piece of art with a very kind of sassy looking babysitter phase and all the little cords running to all the different carries. She really allows carries to go ham, go juvenile, and go straight out, and she can kind of clean up for them when they make a mistake, which is super, super, super powerful, because it does allow you to be a lot more aggressive. And I think having you play with a good phase would be great, because you are a really aggressive carry, and I think you'd be able to get a lot of value where you could still leverage your aggressiveness and pick up some kills and not die on the other side because you got some of to clean up for you. And then I think the 1v1 from Revenant is just so strong. I mean, when he pops that ultimate, getting that mark ability and then unloading an entire obliterate, the amount of damage that you can do in a very short time against an enemy, even if they're outside of regular basic range, is just too strong to ignore. You could also look at, his ability to isolate someone from a fight, even if it's not for a kill. Pull, a Muriel out of a fight if Muriel was any good, or pull an Aurora out of a fight so she can't ult, or pull a Decker out of a fight so your Aurora can ult. I mean, it just gives you so many possibilities. And I think he's super strong. I think in the off lane, Greystone is probably the one to beat. Again, especially with phase, right? Greystone can go and go and go until he's got 10 health left, get pulled back by phase, and then get all of his health back in a few seconds, and then turn around and start charging again. So I think it's hard to argue against him in the off lane.
Okay. I mean, in the off lane. Wait, are you talking about Revenant in the safe lane?
Sorry, Revan in the safe lane with phase, Greystone in the off lane.
Okay, Greystone in the off lane. Okay.
Yes. I think in the jungle, Sevarog right now is still the person to beat. I think you can make arguments for Grux because he does have that early damage. I just fundamentally think that the displacement that Sevarog has between the roots, between the ultimate, the use of stab length, things like that, I think he gives you so many options for lockdown in a team fight or for moving people around, getting single picks. That while arguments can be made for Grux, certainly, or Kwang, I personally feel that Sevarog is probably the strongest pick in the jungle. And then in mid lane, it's still the Belica show. Sure, you've got Decker Howitzer or Decker Gadget combos that are strong, but if you're Decker facing a phase can just pull someone out of that ultimate, right? Phase pull can go up and over a Decker wall. And I think that because of that, being able to get secured immediate damage like you can with a Belica ultimate or a Belica bomb, things like that, I think are super strong. And it also allows you to drain the mana of the phase, which makes the phase less valuable, and then it allows you to burst the phase. If you get a knock-up and then a bomb and then an ultimate as a Belica on a phase, you can wipe the phase off the map, and that allows your team to turn on everyone else.
Okay, so now I'm gonna throw you a curveball here. What would be the counter pick to this team comp that you just suggested?
Okay, so first thing, I would focus on trying to isolate the phase. So the natural, pick, if you don't have a phase in support would be going for a Decker because she has the cage, and focusing the cage on phase as well as any other non-mobile character. So in this case, Belica is also another non-mobile character where if you can get some damage on her and keep her from using her teleblank, if you can cage a phase and a Belica together inside of a cage with like a gadget ult, for instance, or a howitzer ult, you can wipe them off pretty quickly.
Okay.
You could also look at running something like, to deal with the displacement that you get from Sevarog, you could look at running a Kwang out of the jungle, right? It gives you a lot of the similar power in terms of the root, but it also gives you more dive potential. Because again, we're looking to shut down the phase and shut down that back line. Kwang allows you to throw that sword in there, get a shock, and then ult in, and then attack that back line.
Okay.
I think that in the off lane, that's hard. I think Kwang would do well. You know what you could do? You could do Kwang in the off lane, and then you could do Grux in the jungle. So that gives you a high damage combo between the Grux and the Kwang. If you get a good sword tether from the Kwang, and a good shock and a good ult, that sets up a good pull for the Grux slash and an ult from the Grux. That on top of the CC from Decker, and you start to focus this team comp around kind of CC chaining. Kwong to Decker to Grux pull to Grux stun, or Kwong to Grux stun, or Grux stun to Decker tether. You have a lot of different options for being able to go from one to the other, where any two of those three could lead into all of the rest.
Okay. And then mid and carry?
Mid and carry. So against a Bellica, you don't want to run someone that's super high mana. If you can't run a Bellica on your own, I think that Gadget would have been good because she used to have her ticks to be able to deal with the drone pretty easily. Now that the drone is health-based, that's harder. I think Countess is certainly someone to consider in this case. A Countess is going to allow you to get in and out quickly, and it's also going to allow you to take advantage of all the disruption that you're getting from all of the CC. I think that again, everything is focused on killing the phase first. And if you can get a Countess ultimate on the phase and shut the phase down, or, Countess ultimate with the Decker stun or what have you, I think Countess mid might actually work. I think if you run a Decker Grux, Countess, Kwong, and then you can look at a couple options for carry. You could either go for the Thunderdome, which is building Sparrow to try and maximize the ultimate inside of the Decker cage. But given that you're probably going to be able to blow them up pretty easily anyway, I would think about Twin Blast. Twin Blast is a really solid early game carry. He's got the ability to put out a lot of damage quickly. He's got a little bit of mobility, which can really help in trying to create space against a Revenant. And I think he's got the ability with the grenades to cover a large area really quickly, especially, Ash of the Witch is not quite as crazy as it used to be, but I've still seen some people running Ash of the Witch. And I think that, it's certainly a team comp that does not have the same level of frontline potential that you might have, that you would have with the Greystone Severo combo. But the goal of this team comp is to dive the phase, kill the phase, dive the Revenant, kill the Revenant, dive the Bellica, kill the Bellica. Okay. And then the remaining two are not going to do enough damage now to be able to shut you down. So I'm not saying that's a better team comp per se, but I am saying that's probably what I would go for in terms of trying to deal with an A+ all top tier lineup like that. Focus the phase, focus the Revenant. After you've done that, focus the Bellica. After that, the other two are probably not going to do enough damage on their own where you can slowly lock them down and get those CC locks, right? Bellica into Kwong, into Grux, into Countess and all of that stuff until they're dead.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. But wait, I'm sorry. So just to clarify, in your opinion, team comp does not matter, or would that be an accurate?
Oh no, team comp does matter.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, absolutely, team comp matters. I think that team comp is. I wish I saw more variation in team comp at the MMR cap. I think that we, certainly I run into a lot where. If you are not picking nothing but top tier characters at the MMR cap, everyone's going to yell at you for not picking a top tier character in the MMR cap, right? If you're picking Steel off lane instead of Greystone off lane or Kwong off lane or what have you. And I wish that there was a little bit more freedom to kind of play around. But I think team comp does matter. I think when you have the opportunities, and certainly when we have the opportunity to swap picks in the future, whether that's in casual mode or just in ranked mode, I think that's going to help a lot to be able to really counter pick more based on roles as opposed to just on your assigned draft order.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, good to go.
Cool. All right. Quick question from a couple questions. So Gaelig, it would be the Countess.
I'm gonna stop there. I'm gonna stop you for a second. I'm gonna get a drink real quick and be right back.
Okay, cool.
While you answer.
I will talk to chat for a second.
Okay.
Countess in the mid compared to Countess in the offlane. Yeah, so Countess in the mid allows us to run Grux Kwong combo. It Countess mid is not her ideal role, except maybe against a gadget where she could kind of cancel out those mines. But again, we're building a team comp around the burst. We're building a team comp around CC into execution, and Countess is going to be a lot of the execution. And Grux is going to be a lot of the execution. So being able to have both Kwong and Grux, who are both top tier junglers and offlaners, I think it is, for that reason, it is worth going for a Countess mid. And I think she can handle Bellica. I think it's not ideal, but I think it's she can handle it. Thoughts on the upgraded Trader's Touch, specifically on Sevarog or Kwong? Trader's Touch is interesting. I think that Trader's Touch would be useful if we continue to evolve and slow the time to kill. I think we took a step in that direction in V40. But Trader's Touch tends to, if you're doing 5% per hit, it's 20 hits to do 100%. I know you're doing other damage, but you're talking about a relatively small bit of damage that you're adding onto it relative to the amount of damage that you do. And I don't particularly see it as super valuable. It's possible that it might be useful for objectives, but right now the big objective card that everyone's building is Blood-Soaked Armor. So I'm not sure that it necessarily fits. Ideal team comp is Rampage, damage off lane. Yeah, Rampage is too easily shut down right now. There are too many. I love him, right? Rampage was my first love, but there are too many poison cards right now that really shut him down too much. What about the Rev offlane that was in PCL this week? Rev offlane works if you ignore the Rev offlane. If you are a smart team and you are facing Rev offlane, you are going to have your jungler in that lane and basically do a 3v1 lane, and you're going to bully the crap out of him, and you're going to win that lane because he's not going to be able to farm appropriately if you are on him the way you should be. He's not going to be able to hold his towers early game, and he's not going to be able to get any farm whatsoever. So it worked in PCL because they did not expect it and they did not give enough attention to it. But I think I'm not sure that's something that would work consistently. I think people will adapt to that. Where does Feng Mao sit at the moment? It's being played now and then, but I've also heard complaints about his kit. Yeah, he did just get a buff. He does certainly have a lot of bursty ability damage, which is good. And I think that his shield now doing, applying armor to the shield certainly is a little bit of a buff. I don't think that's enough because, again, he doesn't have hard CC. He doesn't have a root. He doesn't have a stun, knockback, things like that. He's really built for dashing in and bursting and ulting, and that's something that Countess can do just as well, and she's a little bit more slippery, and she does more damage. And he kind of teleports in, and then you hit him with a rock, and then you can blow him up. I think he's a good dueler, but I think that he doesn't benefit from phase quite in the same way that someone like Greystone does, and he, as a result, he's a little bit outshined. What do you think about Morigesh? Not useful on most teams without having CC. I think Morigesh is interesting. Morigesh with I've seen a lot more Morigesh tank builds recently. Building Morigesh with like 3,300 health and a whole bunch of armor and Tainted Magic. Between Tainted Magic and Morgus's base damage, because she's got very high base damage, you can 100 to 0 pretty much anyone in the game without too much armor. So I think she'll probably switch to kind of a almost the way that Tanky Iggy used to be and back on Legacy. I think she will be solid for split pushing until people show up and then just being able to walk away without dying. I think she's still going to do plenty of damage. I think she's going to be able to take on people 1v1, but I think she's not necessarily going to do the same damage in team fights that you can do a lot of others. Instead of 6 points of power, TT damage is mathematically equivalent to about 15 points of power. Yeah, but I think you can probably go for more than 15 points of power. And two, again, it's a percentage thing, so it is not nearly as valuable early when you are building damage, and it becomes more valuable late when you do switch to armor and health on those junglers. So it's something to explore. It's not something that I have explored super closely, but I think it's worth taking a look. All right. Last two questions. First of all, wouldn't Aurora be a decent counter to face? Yes, she is a very decent counter to face, which is why a lot of people are running people like Belica mid or Kwong off lane, which allows them to still build a purity sensor to deal with that, because Aurora can beat up phase for sure. And last one, when is it better to lane versus team fighting as a carry? Evan Silver trying to climb and fights break out frequently, and one farming gets stronger. Play selfish. Farm. If your team yells at you because you are still farming at 15 minutes or so, they will no longer be yelling at you when you're 5 points, 10 points higher than everyone else. So do not let yourself be sucked into fights that you don't want to take or you don't think are good fights. Farm as long as you think it's appropriate to farm, and as soon as you've got a big lead and you feel like you can start to fight, then you can start to fight. But don't force them. All right, Covert.
Right, let's do it.
Let's do this thing. All right, so let's skip over a couple stuff. Phase slow at level 1, we talked about that already in game 1. So there were a couple instances in which you, early in this game, you started to engage and you turned around and backed up and did not chase. So let's talk about the first one really quickly, just to show. And again, this is one of the few instances where I will give you kudos on your stream for doing making a good choice, right?
Let's not make that a habit.
Yeah, no, we don't want you to think that you're too good. So this is. Let's do this. Let's jump to. What does 5 minutes and 30 seconds look like for you? What's your up top time?
Let's take a look. I am at 3:31 in game time.
Okay, close enough. So it looks like I'm a second off in this one. So I'm now at 3:31. Okay, so what's going to happen here? You're going to get knocked up and take a Belica shot. You're currently fighting against a Greystone who's going ham at level 3. You got your phase right next to you and linked to you. You're going to survive this fight, and you're going to back up, and your phase is going to keep going, and you are not. So this is a case where you made the right choice. Your phase kept going, and your phase ended up dying. But I think 2 weeks ago, you might have tried to come in with her and fight.
Yep.
And in this case, you did not, and you made the right choice.
Okay.
So you get a little bit lucky. You probably should have died here. I think you bounce on the phase's head or the Belica's head, someone's head, and you end up bouncing into your tower, which is super convenient. But this is something where I wanted to highlight this. I wanted to highlight an instance where it is far better to give up your support early and have your carry live than it is to try and scratch out a kill in retribution and potentially lose both.
Okay.
So we're going to play this in 3, 2, 1, play. So here you go. So you get knocked up, bounce on Greystone's head, and then get bounced into the tower. Greystone takes a couple tower shots and almost dies. Belica takes a couple tower shots. So your phase keeps going because your phase gets tunnel vision on that Greystone and charges all the way down the lane. You see that you are now safe, and you focus on those minions. You are continuing to farm. If you had gone in for that, not only would you have been fighting the Belica, who would have been able to kill you with one bomb, but you also would have been taking aggro from the minions, which would have really messed you up. And it was very smart to stay home.
Can we stop for a second?
Yes.
Because then Belica dives me in tower, misses her knockup, and gets melted.
Let's talk about that. So you made a mistake there, my friend.
I did.
Really lucky. Yes, you did. Because again, kill hierarchy.
Yeah.
If Belica had gone in half a second earlier, she would have traded.
Okay.
She would have traded 1 for 1 because that bomb would have killed you.
Okay.
So you made a very smart play to back up, but you made a very poor choice as to where to back.
Okay.
It would have been a lot smarter to back up a little bit further, or if you see her running at you, just take a couple steps back. You'll lose a couple seconds, but better to lose a couple seconds than lose your life.
Right.
So if Bellica had gone in there and Bellica had traded, if she had picked up that bomb and then died to you, or died to the tower, she would have given up a death to your support who picks up the kill.
Right,
And
that's
you
true.
would
Yeah.
you would be 0-1-0.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that would have actually been well in her favor.
And that would have, in terms of your kill hierarchy, when we're talking about points, that would have been a 6-point engagement for them in their favor, and a 4 for, on our side. So we'd be losing 4 to 6 in that scenario.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
It would have been. It would have been in certainly in their favor, and that's always, anytime anyone except a carry can make a trade for a carry, it's in the favor of the person that is trading for the carry.
Okay. Well, I was just pointing that out because I thought it was hilarious. We were cracking up when she
hysterical.
did that.
Oh God, it was hysterical. I would have been laughing my ass off if that had happened. Right?
But it's still a teachable moment there.
But it is a teachable moment, right? It is, understanding when you are really safe versus when you think you're safe. Being in your tower doesn't make you safe if someone is willing to dive you.
Okay.
So this was another situation where, not just in this case, but in general, I think your phase was, probably new to the hero. Were you duoed with the phase, or was this
this was solo queue, 100%.
Okay. So I think it showed. I think your phase was probably not on the same wavelength as you, and didn't necessarily make the same plays that I would have expected of a phase. But this is all the more reason why it was smart that you backed off, because not having that communication with your support, I think it is important to assume the worst and play on the safe side rather than trying to read each other's intentions without any communication. So that was good of you to back off.
Okay.
So let's talk about this death. So your death happens at, let me find the right spot for you. All right, so how about this? Let's do this. Let's go to, for you, it'd be 10 minutes and 30 seconds.
Okay, I'm at 8:31. Sorry.
8:31. Cool. All right. So what's going to happen here is your phase is kind of poking at the Greystone a little bit. Chimera is going to come out of the jungle. You're going to see that happen, and then you're going to kind of weakly back up to the tower and then kind of engage the Chimera, and then they're going to dive you. So this, I think, is important to talk about when it comes to matchups and understanding the enemy's goals. So right now, Greystone is at level 5. So Greystone has his ult. Chimera is level 5. Chimera has his ult. These two things should set off every single alarm bell in your head possible.
Okay.
Especially being pushed that far up. If you don't see either of them on the map, and this is something that, would be something that we would discuss if you were on a competitive team doing call outs, which is something I like to have my comp teams do, to keep track of everyone. But even without call outs, you should see, I think you see this Chimera come up over a ward. So the Chimera is coming.
Mm-hmm.
And you see him as he shows up in lane.
Right.
If a Chimera is running at you with his ult, and you know that a Greystone is nearby with his ult, assume that they are going to dive you 11 times out of 10.
Okay.
There is no reason for them not to dive you to see whether they can get it off. They will initiate a dive, and if it doesn't work, then they'll back up, and that's fine. But they will at least try to dive. So what you should have done in this case is you should have just backed off. You shouldn't have tried to poke at the Chimera. You're in a position where you have not backed in a while. You've got 5 unspent points. So you only have, one completed Madstone gem.
Mm-hmm.
And you really cannot do enough damage to compete with the level 5 Chimera. Chimera definitely has the advantage here. And again, Greystone, he's got his ultimate. He could just sit there and attack you all day long. So we're going to play this, and you're going to see what happens. You end up hanging out kind of at the outer edge of your tower, and then just get comboed by Greystone and the Chimera ultimate. So we're going to play this in 3, 2, 1, play. Good. So you're clearing off. That's good. You start to come back. You see this arrow come out of the jungle, and you're hanging out by this wall, which is good. You know what's going on. So here's the point where you try to engage him instead of just running away.
Right.
He
Yeah.
jumps on you, slows you, stuns you, ults you, and then it allows Greystone to discharge it. And I know that a lot of people are going to scream, tower should do more. No, I don't care what MOBA you're playing. If you got a character that's got a second life, that's got a couple level lead, and they're only taking 3 tower shots, they're going to live if they die.
Well, I'm not even concerned with that, right? So the first thing I'm doing is, I've got map awareness. Let's start with this. Map awareness is not, or I'm going to say has not been one of my strengths. It's improved, and I don't know, chat may argue against me here, but I know it because I'm like actively working on it. So it's improved vastly over the last 2 weeks. Now, so I know what's going on there. Chimera goes over the ward. That's why I retreated there. And so what I'm doing there is I've got tunnel vision on Chimera. I didn't even notice my support coming up. And what I'm trying to do there is I'm using that wall as a way to dodge him, right? Like if he comes around, then I may drop down and then try to escape. If he tries to go gold side, which is what he tried to do, and then I went around. Now, what I'm expecting here once I do see my support is the tether. And I didn't get that. So now, and I know it's solo queue, and you're right, I should just assume that I'm not going to get the tether there, and I should just make the safe play. But I actually thought I was going to get the tether and then, have some survivability there, and we'd be able to do something, and it didn't happen. But so no, I get the whole thing about solo queue and me needing to be a little more careful or not give as much latitude to people in solo queue, but it does happen.
I certainly don't blame you for that happening, because again, I've made that same mistake a billion times. Assuming that someone is going to do something that you think is a totally natural play for them to make, and they don't make that play. And I've been on the other end, is other people have assumed I'm going to make a play that I probably should have made that they thought was a totally natural play.
Yeah.
But this is a case where, again, if you're not on comms with someone, you kind of got to assume the worst. Not that they're a bad player, but that they are not on the same wavelength with you. And that it's better to play safe until you're sure that they are on the same wavelength with you, or that you're far enough ahead that it doesn't really matter to start to play a little bit more aggressive.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Okay.
All right. Let's see here. Should fight Greystone with his ult? No. Okay, here we go. Target selection. So let's do this. Let's jump to... So it's 13 at the top clock, which would mean let's go to 14 minutes and 45 seconds.
Okay, I'm at 12:45 in game time.
Cool. All right, so you're going to get a good fight here. You're fighting a phase and a Greystone. You're going to end up retreating to your tower, and then there's going to be a bunch of good stuff that's happening. So this is one where I just want you to pick, instead of the drone, just pick the hero chase for yourself. And I'm not going to narrate this at all. I'm just going to tell you when to stop.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about target selection.
Okay.
So I want you to follow with the hero chase and take a look at who you're attacking at any given time and whether or not you should be attacking. So we're going to play this for about 15 seconds or so. So I'm ready to play in 3, 2, 1, play. All right, we can stop here.
Okay.
So that's good. Okay, so let's talk about things you did well in target selection. What do you think was the best target selection that you made?
Well, in terms of kill hierarchy, I went for their 5.
Yes. Yes.
So right there, right off the jump, we're gonna lose our phase. So that's 1 point that they're basically 1-0 at that point, and then I kill their 5, which is the carry in terms of kill hierarchy. So now I just flip that and we're 5-1.
Right.
Then I see there's a Greystone, and rather than focusing Greystone, I go after their support, which in this case is phase. So normally in your kill hierarchy, phase would only be worth 1 point, but the truth is, if I would have tried to go on that Greystone, she tethered Greystone, which basically means he's an immortal, and so I targeted phase immediately thereafter.
Yes, so that is exactly right. And if you had a camera, you just see me nodding my head for the last like 10 seconds. Right. That is exactly right. You went for their carry first, which was exactly the right choice, because again, the most important priority is killing the enemy carry. So that was awesome. You turn on the phase, did some damage, turn on the Greystone, realized you weren't doing any damage to Greystone, which is important. That it's fine that you target the Greystone, but you realize really quickly that you weren't doing damage to him and turn back to the phase. And that's important. So many people get locked on one target and think, I must kill whatever target I'm fighting before I turn to someone else. And what I want to target, or what I want to mention here, is something you did incredibly well, which is you recognize the situation. You recognized that you weren't doing damage to Greystone, and you said, I can't kill this guy, so let me turn on the person that I cannot kill. Or sorry, that I can kill. I can't kill Greystone, I can kill phase. So you went from phase to Greystone and then back to phase, as opposed to just trying to, slap your hands against Greystone's ridiculously armored, muscly body and all that. And you focused on what you could kill, and you got that kill. And I think that is incredibly important to talk about, because again, so many players, they see a target and they think, it's kind of like this Thunderdome mentality, like you die or I die, and we're gonna keep fighting each other, and one of us is gonna die. No. You got to think about who the best target for you at any given time is. And if that is a Greystone because he's super low, sure, that's a Greystone. But in this case, you realize that the smart choice was the phase, and you switch back to the phase to get the kill.
So can I point something out that I don't know the answer to here, and maybe this is a critique, but I'm not sure. But so I've got Greystone focused by the tower there, and I retreat. Now I've got 2 deaths already, and I'm basically saying to myself, okay, I just need to get out of here. My phase is about to die. I got to get out of here so that I can survive, and I'm going to give up this T1. But he was being focused by the tower. Obviously, the rest of his teammates are coming. He's got phase, and he's got Revenant coming in there. This is before Revenant dies, obviously. So should I have, because I'll do this sometimes, I'll try to kite them in that tower so that they continue to take damage. And, I guess even if I die, then, they're going to get eaten alive, or, whatever the case may be. But do you think it was a good play there to leave the tower and just try to escape? Or do you think I should have continued to kite him given the circumstances? And if you agree with my decision to leave, if you could then give us an alternative scenario there where you think it would have been a good decision to continue to kite him.
Okay. In this case, absolutely the right decision. The case in which is a decision to kite
the right decision was to have
you
left.
You made the right choice to run.
Okay.
So you made the exact right choice, which is to run. What the case in which it would have been better to hang around the tower is if you are dealing with anyone except a Rampage or Greystone. Rampage or Greystone can sit there, if they have their ults, can sit there and tank for an hour and a half.
Okay.
And they will play Ring Around the Rosie with you, and they will continue to attack you as you run around in your own tower, and you'll die, and it won't do anything to you. If you're getting dove by a Grux or a Kwang or a very early game Sevarog without their ult to knock you away, things like that, or by a caster or someone else, it's fine to kite them around a little bit. Generally, I think it is better to walk away because your tower was not in danger at this point. So, and again, we talked about this the first game. The most important thing is living. It is the number one priority you have is not securing a kill. It is continuing to stay alive. And if running away from your tower is what allows you to stay alive, then that's what you should do. And Greystone will chase you around and around and around that tower forever. But what you did is you forced yourself, or forced the enemy to come not only through the tower, but out the other side and back towards, now you are running into two of your allies, right? You're running towards safety, which was exactly the right thing to do.
Okay. Perfect.
So this is actually a good spot to stop, because I wanted to talk about something really quickly. This is a small one.
Okay.
So what's about to happen here is Belica is going to put on her dancing shoes. She is going to juke the ever-loving crap out of your entire team. And your Belica has a great through-the-wall knock-up that allows you to still secure the kill, but if she had not done that, it would have been trouble. So what I want to talk about here is understanding an enemy's options. So if you look at the map, you can see that you don't have any enemy minions that would be pushing into your tower and making your tower a safe zone for Belica to walk back. So her choice is to either run through your tower and take a bunch of damage while being chased by you guys, or try and run back to the jungle. All three of you commit as if she's running towards your tower, which doesn't make sense. And she jukes back. She takes a step through the fog wall and then runs the other way and completely jukes out your entire team and is able to run back and almost escapes.
Okay.
So what I would have liked to see from you here is you actually position yourself on the backside closer to your jungle and further away from your tower. Because again, you've always got your lash kick, where if she decides to commit into your tower, you can lash kick to get up next to her and hit her once or twice while she's trying to tank tower shots.
Okay.
And instead, what you do is you get juked out, try and chase her back to the tower, and she runs away, and the lash kick puts you on the backside of her as she's running through jungle, which is far safer for her. Does that make sense?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're going to play this, and you're going to see exactly what I was talking about in 3, 2, 1, go. So she runs forward, everyone chases her, and she turns around and runs the other way. You see what I mean? She just like dancing shoes her way, and again, great knock-up by Belica to be able to close it off, and you can pause this here. Great knock-up by Belica through the wall. Your Belica did a great job, but she had 3 people chase her in a direction that she had no reason to follow through with.
Right.
There was no way she was ever going to completely go that direction, and she was almost able to escape because she juked all 3 of you at the same time.
Okay.
So that's something to think about. Again, it's hard in the moment, but if you can, think about how many options the enemy has and how to position yourself to impede their best option out and force them to take a worse option.
Okay.
Cool. All right, so let's move on then. We're getting close to the end of the night and close to the end here. Okay, this one is just a very small one. You are not as on top of the gold buff as I would have liked you to be.
Okay.
You really should be whenever you're in range, especially whenever you're laning. Whenever you're laning, you should be on that gold buff within a second of it spawning, because a good offlaner is going to be on that thing as well, and it's free experience. It's half a wave's worth of experience right off the bat. But even if you are just in the area, it's worth making a detour to it. So just make sure that you are understanding every odd minute, 3 minutes, 5, 7, 9, 11, so on and so forth. Especially through those first 15, 17 minutes that you were on that gold buff over and over again. Because there were a number of instances where you looked at the gold buff and kind of walked away and did other things. There are a few things as valuable in terms of the CXP you get relative to how easy it is to get it that can rival a gold buff. It takes you 1 or 2 shots and you get a ton of value for it.
So one of the things that Severon suggested was, and I've been doing this, is letting the support have it early, so that the support can get quenching, honor the pure, or barrier of will, like to expedite those cards that help keep me alive later, or like even early
Right.
game.
So that is a there are situations in which that is proper. And the situation in which I think that's proper is if your support is just short of being able to hit the next margin, which is to say, you need 7 points for quenching scales. So if they were to sell their healer token, they need 5 more points. Let's say they've got 4 to spend and they're halfway to 5 points, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you let them take it because it gets them the 5th point, and then they sell their healer token and they get full quenching scales.
Mm-hmm.
I think you don't want to just give it to the support. The
Okay.
support will get enough farm to be able to get those cards through the run of play. And if that gold buff is not going to make a difference on the back that they are making right then, I would much rather give all of the farm to the carry. I would rather the carry end up with 1 or 2 extra points and the support be slightly slower, so that the first time you start to have those team fights around Raptors, for instance, when you start to get to the 10, 12-minute mark, um, I'd rather have 2 extra points on my carry because they've taken an extra 3 or 4 gold buffs than have an extra 2 points on my support that may or may not have made a difference. So I'm not saying that Sevron is raw. I'm just saying that it's not a flat thing. I would not give it to my support every time. My support is close, and if it would make a difference in getting an item online on the next back, then sure. But I think it is important to make sure that it is a valuable gold buff, and that is not just free XP that they get. Because again, if your support's going to back and they can't buy things, and then they're going to be out for another 5 minutes anyway, and by the time they back the next time, they'll have enough. It doesn't really matter either way.
Okay, so, but in solo queue, I don't really have a good gauge of. I mean, I could always hit tab and see, like, if they're like a point away. I could say, like, I guess I could ping them and tell them to go take it or something. But if I'm solo queue and I don't have comms, are you saying that I should flat out, if I'm in solo queue and like I don't have the time to check tab and type to them or whatever, just take gold buff and be done with it?
It is, again, in solo queue, assume the worst of your allies, in that assume they are not as efficient, they're not as smart, they're not thinking ahead. Take the gold buff if you're the carry. If you're the support and you need that extra little bit, you can take it and then explain it to your carry as you're backing, and most carries will be okay with it and understand. But again, when you don't have communications, it's better to take the initiative and make the selfish play rather than totally assume that the enemy is or that your ally is going to follow up.
Okay.
So what Severon is saying is right if you are duo queuing, with your support, or if you're playing on a team, and if it's the right situation for that. However, if you are solo queuing, I would not necessarily rely on that.
Okay. Gotcha. No problem.
Cool.
I'll start taking gold buff.
All right, so let's talk about an opportunity that the enemy had that they did not take advantage of, because I think it's important not just to realize instances in which you had an advantage, or in which things went well for you, but also cases where the enemy should have taken advantage. So do me a favor, go to 17 minutes and 50 seconds.
Okay, I'm there. 1550.
Okay, 1550. So do me a favor. Look at this map right now and tell me what the orange team should do.
They should try to gank me. Wait a second. Is Raptors up? Yes, Raptors is up. Yeah, they should go Raptors right now.
Absolutely, they should go Raptors.
Yeah.
And they do not.
Right.
So this is a huge missed opportunity for them. Huge missed opportunity for them. They have got all 4 of their living allies up. They know where your team is because they just pushed them to back. They know that they're forcing the Chimera to back. They know that the Bellica's got no mana. They know that FaZe is far away, and I don't think they see you on the map because I don't think you're near any enemy minions. But either way, they know that they are in a great position. They've got all of their health. Most of them have their mana, and they are right next to Raptors. The enemy team should have gone for Raptors in this instance. And there's nothing that you could have done. This is not anything that you could not have responded necessarily in any way right here. But it is just something to highlight that if you're ever in the situation that the orange team is in, make that ping. Be aggressive on those pings. A lot of times, again, especially in solo queue, when you don't really have a clear-cut shot caller, doesn't matter what role you're playing. Make calls. People will follow the calls, and if they're good calls, people will be happy with you for making the calls. But sometimes you have to take the initiative in helping your team understand what they have to do. And what happened here is out of the 4 possible players on Orange who were all really close to Raptors and all knew that Raptors were up because they hadn't been taken yet, none of the 4 of them took the initiative to try and take those Raptors, which again would have been free, and it would have been a huge advantage for their carry. I mean, their carry at this point was a point behind you. They would have ended up a couple points ahead of you from getting these Raptors for free, and they didn't do them.
So talking about shot calling and all of that. So this particular evening for me was like I don't know if it was an epiphany, because on Sunday I felt like I was way more passive again, but on this particular evening I felt like my decision making finally had come online, and I was like just like leading the team constantly, like, typing, explaining things, pinging, like just like, so there's a sequence here where we take mid. I think it's T2. So Taylor Swiftcaster randomly wound up in this game, but Taylor Swiftcaster is actually a viewer, and so there we wind up with like 3 or 4 people on my side, and I see Bellica start to rotate to us, and rather than have her rotate to us, I start spamming attack mid, because it's later in the game. This tower is like pretty much melted anyway. The rotations I don't think was going to help us very much, and if they lose jump pads, I saw that as more valuable than our T1. So throughout the whole game, I thought I made these really good decisions. There was 2 bad, maybe. There was one for sure that was a bad decision. The other one was questionable, but I had become a little more timid because I didn't like the circumstances of the fight, and so I wound up calling off the dogs, if you will. But this game, the reason why I was most interested in you reviewing the demo was I felt really good this whole game. I was pumped up. I was jacked up on some Mountain Dew or something. And we wound up losing this game. And it was just like, it was super deflating, and I felt very defeated afterwards. So part of why I wanted to go over this demo with you was for you to explain to me where we lost the game here, and for the channel, because we had somewhere between 220, 250 people watching this game, and the end result was just like everyone was just dumbfounded at how we lost this game. So anyway, I wanted to talk. You touched on shot calling, but I was doing that this game, and it kind of gave me a chance here to say what the original reason was that I wanted you to look at this game. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, and certainly I was actually going to bring up the decision that you guys made to go for OP at about about 31, 32 minutes into this game was a great call. And that was something I wanted to highlight. So I was actually going to ask who made that call. So if you did that, that's a fantastic decision that you made. So we are getting later into the night, so we can start to wrap this up. So let's talk a little bit about where things started to go wrong. Okay. So you guys took OP. You guys ended up getting a mid inhibitor out of the OP, which was a great decision about 30 minutes into the game. The problem that you ran into was things started to go wrong when you lost your first inhibitor.
Right.
So that happened at about 39 minutes. So in the little game log, that would be, let's look at this map all right, so do me a favor, go to 41 minutes on your map.
I am there.
Okay. So do me a favor and at the top right of the map, the minion waves that are attacking each other.
Yep.
On the top right, and tell me what you see.
They are that lane. That lane is set against us.
Yes. So that is, anytime you are sieging a lane, you want to make sure that the other lanes are set in your favor.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have a huge advantage because you have already taken down an inhibitor, and you don't need to push it right now. You don't need to force it. What should have happened is you guys should have stalled, farmed for a little bit. It looks like there was a gold buff that was available to take their jungle, do something efficient for 15, 20 seconds while someone clears that lane. Because what ended up happening is your entire team sat there in right lane, kind of stalemated, eventually took the tier 2 tower, but was not able to defend your inhibitor. And you traded a tier 2 tower for an inhibitor.
Right. Yeah. So in this sequence, I was very aggressive.
Yes.
So in solo queue, one of the things that I've had a hard time with is trying to, and I don't know what it is, but trying to get my teammates to be as aggressive as I think they should be. And so a lot of times when I see the opportunity, like I want to go for it, because I feel like I may not get this opportunity again. And in this scenario, I wanted one of us to back, but there's no like quick call for that. So I would have had to have stopped and started typing and all of this jazz. But so like I wanted to keep pressing this. I wanted to keep them here because I thought, okay, middle is going to push to them because we have super minions. If we can stall them out here, then we'll get minions going down through where their inhibitor was to their core, and then we'll have taken T2, and then we can go to their inhib. They're going to have to make a decision. Granted, right. We don't have left set, so that's a really big problem.
So that's kind of it. It's two slightly different things that are kind of different sides of the same coin. So you talk about being aggressive, but also you talk about stalling. So in this case, stalling is the more important thing. You don't necessarily have to start a fight right now. All you have to do is preserve that left lane for you guys and flip that left lane and force them to respond to mid, because you've got a huge wave building up mid, right? You got to, mid is way in your favor. If you had covered that left lane and backed up a little bit and forced them to either rotate to that mid lane or defend this tower, you would have been able to not only take this tower for free, but Belica would have been forced to respond to the mid lane instead of being able to push the side lane if someone had appropriately gone to cover that, which then would have allowed you to flip it and then rotate much more easily, and you would have had a much better time. Instead, you sent probably, well, I guess maybe the phase would have been a worse choice, but the second worst choice to go try and defend a lane in terms of clear is Chimera.
Agreed.
And the Chimera got beat up, and the Chimera had to back. And by the time you realized that was happening and you started to back, the Belica was already in a position to be able to take your inhibitor, and that's when things started to go downhill. So this is really, I think it's a common thing, a common kind of idiom, especially in higher levels of play. You flip and group, right? You whatever lanes are pushed against you, you flip them so they are pushing for you, and then you group up. And it's made that much easier when you've already got a lane that will naturally flip itself for you. So all you have to do is worry about that other lane. And taking the time and being a little bit more conservative, a little bit more cautious, and making sure that you do have all of your lanes taken care of, I think is far more valuable than necessarily trying to push the envelope and push the issue. Because you guys already have a big lead right now, right? You've already taken down an inhibitor. That's pretty huge.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and at this point, let's see here. I'm 6-3-3. I have 22 CXP, and their carry's got 18. So I'm ahead of their jungler's the closest one to me at 20. Again, I kind of just like smelled blood here, but yes, yeah. So like, look, if I was on comms here with, like, let's say this was Sub Sunday, it would have been really simple to say, hey, so and so back real quick. We're gonna stall them out here. So let's make sure we set that, and then you come right back, right? Now, even then though, I'm gonna be honest. Even then, when I say that, I say it begrudgingly, because I understand that when I say back, set, and come back here as soon as possible, sometimes that doesn't mean just kill the range minion. That means, like, they're going to kill 3 waves before they come back, and then, like, the party's over, So, So, again, like I know exactly what you're saying, and when this happened, I was devastated, because I could not believe we had given up an inhib in a game where, like, we were just wrecking shop, and, but at the same time, it's, like, the scars of, like, not doing what I think we should do, I guess, like, played out here. But yes, I duly noted. Like,
again, it's as awful as it is, you have to assume that your teammates do not know what they're doing, which means you sometimes have to be a little bit more kind of verbose with your instructions and things like that. I mean, the thing that jumps to mind as an example is I spent a couple years as an EMT, and when we're doing our EMT training, they were always talking about, if something bad was to happen, you don't just say, someone call 911. You point at someone and you say, you call 911, right? If there's some sort of emergency happening in a shopping mall or whatever. And sometimes you kind of have to do the same thing. If you just say, someone cover left lane, everyone is going to defer responsibility, and everyone's going to assume someone else is going to do it. Sometimes you have to kind of take it upon yourself and say, Bellica, can you cover left? We'll hold the lane, right? Or Crunch, can you cover left? Or you sometimes you have to kind of call someone out and pick someone that will go and do that, because you really have to. Again, you kind of, people will defer the responsibility. They'll assume someone else will take care of it because they want the glory of taking the tier 2. They don't want to be the one to go and clear that tower out.
Okay.
All right, so let's talk about the next spot that things went wrong.
Okay.
And this is where it went pretty wrong. So this is the one mistake that I think was where the game ended. So it was about 10 minutes later. It was the orb prime that the enemy got. Mm-hmm. And this is a matter of game awareness. So do me a favor, go to 50 minutes and 20 seconds.
Okay, I'm there.
All right. So you lost your crunch, which is not great. But you see the enemy Bellica on the map because she's attacking your minions, so you know that she's appeared there. I think the enemy Chimera is not on the map. No, he is on the map because he's being attacked by your minions. Yeah. So you know where the enemy Chimera is, you know where the Bellica is, and you know the other 3 are doing OP because you just saw them. So what you guys do here is you guys back up and let them have Orb Prime for free. No one makes an attempt to try and disrupt it. No one makes an attempt to go in on them. No one makes an attempt to get a pickoff kill. And no one makes an attempt to get a steal on Orb Prime. Despite the fact that you had a wave pushing in mid, which meant that you would have been fine in that regard. You don't have to worry about them pushing down mid lane super fast. Someone's going to have to deal with that. And besides the fact that that Bellica is in left lane trying to flip a wave. So you essentially have a 4-on-3 in the Orb Prime pit. Right? You've got FaZe, you've got Chimera, you've got Bellica, you got yourself against a Revenant, a FaZe, and a Greystone. But the other thing to keep tabs on is that because they are attacking Orb Prime, it's kind of like a 5v3 because you've got Orb Prime on your side because they've drawn the aggro for it.
Right.
And their attention is focused on it, so that they're not looking at you. Now would have been the perfect time to re-engage. If your entire team had been positioned right about where your FaZe is, and even if the Greystone saw it, most teams, especially if they're not all on comms together, are not organized enough to realize that a swarm of enemies are piling into the Orb Prime pit until it's too late. You probably would have had an opportunity if you completely focused down the FaZe and you focused down the Revenant to kill those two. And if nothing else, even if you don't kill the Greystone and even if you can't end the game, you deny their Orb Prime. And even if you don't kill any of them, you deny the Orb Prime. Showing up with 4 people should be enough to force them away and force them back, which allows you to stall until your crunch comes back. Instead, your team gives up Orb Prime as if there were only 3 of you and their entire team of 5 was taking OP and they were ahead, which is not the way to go. You guys had an advantage, and yet you chose to play too safe in this case. And I know I've preached playing conservative in a lot of things. This is one case in which you need to be aggressive. You need to force the issue with that because Orb Prime is way too valuable to let go without putting up any sort of fight.
So like I said, this game was heartbreaking for me. So if you notice, there's a couple things here, right? Like, so we kind of skipped along, but what for anyone that wasn't here or maybe doesn't remember this match, so we did give up our left inhib. And it was idiocy to let that happen. Now, once that happened, my counterplay to that was set the waves, group on left, and we're going to barrel down left, and we're going to counterplay that by taking their inhib, so I don't have to worry about that the rest of the game, right? Like, so that doesn't become a hindrance. So there were 2 decisions here that took place that I was told later that some individuals thought was a mistake. When we took that inhib, I called off the dogs again and said retreat, because it had become clear to me at that point that we had a Chimera that was not tanky and we had a Crunch that was building crit. And I became very, very opposed to like getting into these sustained engagements where a FaZe could latch onto the Greystone and all that, because we didn't have a tank. So that was the first play where I was told, hey, you guys should have stayed aggressive there and tried to finish the game right then and there. The second play was right here, what you're showing, which is we were going to OP and I made the call to retreat because, again, we had just lost Crunch. I just, being with full candor here, I was a bit demoralized and I may have let my emotions get the best of me, and I just was like very risk adverse to trying to go in with a Kai that just is not tanky. And I say all that because I think it's important for everybody to understand what took place in between this, and I have to take responsibility for I can't take responsibility for their build decisions, but I have to take responsibility because I did take the bull by the horns this game, and I was just telling everybody what they needed to do. So given all of that, can you tell me, do you still feel that bullish about this OP decision? And it's completely fine if you do, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think that it's hard because you're exactly right in that your team was not necessarily building right to frontline the way that they should have been. However, even with them building the way that they did, I think it's still a situation in which I would have preferred going in to, again, it's posturing is often, especially in the late game, posturing is just as important as actually initiating. And all you really needed to do in this case was posture. Okay. Greystone was not going to try and fight 4 people. Greystone was a lookout. His job was not, he can't do that much to zone because 4 of you would be able to blow him up, especially if FaZe is still back over the Revenant.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would have done is just showed. If your 4 people show up at those top steps where Greystone is now, those 3 people on the enemy team run away. And that's all you need them to do. Okay. Because again, you've got 2 inhibs down, they only have 1 inhib down. All you need them to do is back off and not take OP right now. And all you need them to do is stall. All you need to do is stall long enough to get your crunch online and get the 5v5, and then everybody goes on left lane, right? Where it's the kind of thing where often, especially when you're ahead, the way that you're ahead. I mean, you're at 60 and the enemy Revenant's at 58, which is not a huge, but it's enough. When you're ahead, the enemy should be scared of you. You have the advantage. You guys have been dominating most of this game, except for a silly, opportunity that the Bellica was able to get. Do not let them seize the advantage from you. Do not let them seize the initiative, right? Show up, force them to make a decision to either go for risky OP and get collapsed on by 4 people, or back up and play it safe and allow you to get your 5th member back up.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Cool. Understood.
All right, so let's talk then about the last thing, which is the choice of inhib. So we've hit all the major objectives. This is, I think, the turning point. As soon as the enemy team took OP here, the game, in my opinion, was over. Mm-hmm. I think it was kind of a situation where OP this late in the game is pretty much GG. I do want to talk about one last thing, which probably again did not affect the end of the game, but I think is one last thing to talk about before we wrap up. So do me a favor, go to 51 minutes and 55 seconds.
Okay. I am there now. It's 49:55.
Cool. All right, so you're looking at your right between your middle and right inhibitors.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You've got a Greystone attacking your mid inhib, and you've got a Chimera that's going after your right inhib.
Yeah.
So this is a decision-making situation. I'm not sure if you remember this or not. Which of those 2 inhibs do you try and defend, and did you make the correct decision?
I don't remember which one I try to defend, but...
Okay, in that case, which one do you think, looking at this right now, scrolling left and right, which one should you go to try and defend?
I'm going to say right, because it has, full health there. But he does have minions and whatnot, but I'm assuming that I should have gone to the right one, and I think I go to the mid.
Yes, both of those are correct. So, and there's one other thing that you didn't mention, which is that the Greystone has ultimate.
Right.
So, you are not going to be able to fight off a Greystone at level 15 and full build with his ultimate and your inhibitor at 5% health.
Okay.
What you could do is go to the right, clear all the minions super quickly with your Windburn, and force the Chimera to back up. And that would allow you to at least retain 1 inhibitor, and then it would be 2 inhibitors to 2 inhibitors, and actually the 1 inhibitor you would have up would be the 1 inhibitor they have up, so it would still be an even matchup.
Yeah. Yep.
And instead you opted to try and do damage to the 1 character that takes the least damage from you and has the most health and has a second life and already almost has the inhibitor down.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is it's a situation again of recognizing who can do the most damage and what things are already lost. In this case, stop the bleeding. You know that middle inhibitor is lost because it's got a Greystone with ult attacking it and it's almost done already. But right has not been lost yet. And that you are at 60 points. You can fight a Chimera even with OP. However, if you let him go on his own with 7 minions in there, he's going to kill the inhibitor.
Right, right.
So you need to show up there, clear the ranged minions, then clear the other minions, and then you start attacking him. And if he wants to try and fight through the back door as a Chimera, not as a Greystone, then make him do that while he's being attacked by a Yin. But he doesn't have the same level of basic armor protection that Greystone does. He also doesn't have a second life the way that Greystone does.
Right.
And his regen is totally insignificant against a 60-point carry.
Right.
So, anyway, so that's all I got in this one. The big things where this game went wrong. Number one was recognizing that your left lane was pushing against you back at that 39-minute mark, and number two was not trying to contest the Orb Prime that they took. That ended up eventually allowing them to clear all of your inhibitors and then ultimately end the game.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm
glad you pointed this out because I didn't. This isn't even something that I glossed over. I mean, I don't know what my frame of mind was at this point. Like, I don't know how triggered I was here, but
I would have been pretty tilted too.
But I'm glad you pointed this out because I didn't even this wasn't even. I was like, I can't believe this. I can't kill either of them. Yeah. I was like, but yeah, I definitely should have gone to the right inhib, and more so because it actually would have put us at a tie ball game here, and I didn't read this during the game. I didn't read it after the game. This is something that I don't even think anybody discussed in chat. So thank you for spotting this for me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Do you have any questions for me about this game or the previous game, or you want to start to wrap this thing up?
No, I think I'm good. I mean, I took good notes here. I'm gonna do my best to try to have this translate into better play. I will say that a lot of these things, it's like, Culturalism said earlier, he's like, tell them that you've played 30 games already. And so not a lot of them, but some of the things in here, I know. It's just that in the heat of the moment, I used to be a competitive shooter, and when I first went out to the range and I was trying to learn some of the things, it's like, okay, well, I just ran dry, right? And you almost had to pull the trigger on the rifle to know that you're out of ammo, right?
Right.
And it's like, okay, well, hold on, I've got to reload now. So you gotta release the there's a button on the magwell. You hit your release, your mag release, and then you've got to reload the weapon, and then it's like, okay, well, now I gotta let the bolt slide forward, and it's like when the first time you're doing all of these things, it's super it's very tedious, and so it's the devil's in the details, and so it's like, okay, you have to actively be thinking about each one of these steps, and once you become an experienced shooter, you don't even need I mean, you're supposed to keep count of how many rounds are leaving your weapon, but something that happens when you run dry is that the buttstock actually will go mush on your shoulder, and it's not even something that I'm conscious of it because I know it, but it's just something that happens on the fly, and it isn't I'm not saying oh, I just felt my buttstock, do the following. It's just no, I'm dry, boom, and I'm just doing a speed reload into it. And I've tried to convey that. I've not explained that particular story, but I've explained in the past about how muscle memory with my competitive shooting, it takes time to get to that point. And this being my first MOBA, I feel sometimes I'm just overwhelmed with the amount of things that are going on and that I need to be conscious of. And I'll look up a chat and people will be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that. And I'm like, I know, it was so bad and I'm sorry. And it's because I know that that's the right thing to do. It's just that I'm just on complete overload at times. And so this helps me because I can go back, I can read this, and hopefully it ingrains into my soul, and I can try to do better with these things. But and there were some excellent points here, things that I either didn't identify in game, or just like, oh, I never thought about that. And I'm hoping the big thing here was, for me, so it's interesting because this scenario between the two of us has kind of evolved. Initially, when I reached out to to the individual that I reached out to that recommended me to you, it was more from like so for my own self benefit, where it was like, okay, I need to get better at this game. I cannot continue to pleb around like I am with 200 plus viewers here at times. And but then, I mean, we were just getting into the thing, and it was like, wait a second, how the heck do I convey all of this to the channel, and at the same time not like, because I almost felt like I was like, okay, well, I could explain this or that, and I was like, but like, I want to give JShredz the credit for this. Really hope that that this has helped everybody in the channel. So I
Well, I
really
mean,
do.
this is I think been hopefully good for both of us. I mean,
Yeah.
the reason I do the coaching and all that is just so that people can improve at this game that we both enjoy so much. And it's I don't really care so much about the credit. I just really enjoy seeing people get better because it makes me feel good. And this is, and we're still really early in the game, right? You think about the oldest Paragon players from day one that started in the very first online test have still only been playing, not even at this point, 18 months, versus you look at other games like Dota or other MOBAs like Dota or League or Smite, where people have years and years and years of experience. This is still a quickly evolving game, and there's still people that are joining it brand new every day, and even those that have been around the block are still learning it. So I think this has been a good opportunity, hopefully, for a pretty good number of viewers, almost 200 viewers, to talk about some of the things that maybe people already knew and maybe they didn't, and maybe reinforce some things that they'd heard but not spent much time with, and hopefully it gives you at least a starting point to start to train that muscle memory, where it won't, maybe you don't do it right the first time or the second time or the third time, but you know what to look for, and after the fourth time, then it starts to make a little bit of sense, and then the fifth time it was pretty easy, and then the sixth and seventh time, and so on and so forth. It's just that muscle memory, and once you understand where you're trying to get and what you're trying to do, then you can start to really allow that to take hold and take root in your gameplay. And I think it was certainly a lot of fun for me, and I want to thank you for the opportunity. But it's a great opportunity to have someone so willing to open themselves up to constructive criticism and open themselves up in front of their own community to kind of get dissected the way that you allowed me to dissect your play style. But I certainly enjoyed it.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to hang out here with me and the channel, and for being so kind, answering all the questions and whatnot. And I guess as a parting request, Shriek wants me to ask you if you can please say hi to him.
Yes, absolutely, Shriek. I certainly want to thank you and everyone else that was out here watching this stream and hopefully gathering some knowledge. And I do want to say out there that I don't have time for 1,000 coaching sessions a week, but if you're looking for some coaching, feel free to find me on Discord. Either you can join the Toronto Discord, and I'm on the right under coaches, or you can find me on Discord at JShredz number 3531.
Can somebody type that in chat, please? Can you repeat that again?
Yes, it is JShredz number or hashtag 3531 on Discord. Or you can find me. I'm one of the moderators on the Paragon r/Paragon subreddit. And you can always shoot me a message there, and we can start to get together and set up some time and maybe do some coaching sessions with some of the people that were here today.
Okay. One last thing. If you have any, do you have any tips? And I've read some of your posts in the past, but for those individuals that are in maybe the lower brackets and feel like there's no hope to getting out of bronze, silver, low gold, whatever it may be, do you have a suggestion? Number one, and I know the answer, but number one, do you think it's possible to get yourself out of there? And number two, as a parting gift to them, can you give them the strongest, like, what is the one thing that they can do, or let's say the top three things that they can do to dig themselves out of that situation?
Yep. So I just sent you on Discord covered. I just sent you a link. So this is a little AMA type thing that I did in January, I believe. So I started a new account because I wanted to, I had made my way up to high MMR pretty early on in the game, and it had been a long time since I had actually gone through the solo queue grind and really understood a lot of the frustrations that people had with teammates at kind of the lower to mid-level MMR level. And I wanted to make a new account to try and work my way through purely solo queuing to try and deal with that. And I was able to get back up to Agora Diamond, which again is by no means a perfect example of skill, and is only a third-party unofficial website. So I want to make sure to preface that with that, but I think is a pretty decent benchmark for kind of recording MMR. And there are a lot of things that I picked up solo queuing and going through this process that I did not have or did not think about before I started it. So this is a thread that I did that I think captures a lot of the kind of significant things that I noticed, and a lot of it talks about being selfish. Right, a lot of it talks about not necessarily trusting your teammates, but focusing on doing what you can to maximize your ability to contribute in the game. So there's a number of things in here, but certainly if anyone has any other questions or wants an answer to something a little bit more specific, please shoot me a message on Reddit, shoot me a message on Discord. I'm always happy to help.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you again. And so again, guys, you can find him either on Discord. I put his exact Discord ID in chat. It is case sensitive, so you do have to capitalize the J and the S on that. You can also find him, like he said, he's a mod on the Paragon Reddit. And so you guys can find him on there. And I included the link to this particular post, which will give you his user information on Reddit, and you can message him there. That's how I actually originally made contact with him. So again, thank you so much, JShredz. And chat is asking for us to do this again. I want to try to learn from what we did this evening to try to make it better next time. Maybe you and I can, number one, I'd love to do another session with you privately as well. That way I can really focus on this 100% next time, and then we can talk about like what went well, or what we can improve on, and then maybe we can do this again together.
Absolutely. I think it's certainly we'll do this I don't know, once a month, once every several weeks, something like that. I think I'd certainly be happy to do this again, and hopefully the community will get something out of it.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, thank you.
Right.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yep. You have a wonderful night, my friend.
Likewise. Have a good Tuesday. Yes, sir.
Yep. Thank you, everybody in chat, for hanging out with us.
All right, buddy. Take it easy. Thanks.
All right. Take it easy.
Bye-bye. All right. So